Hi, my name is Bob Greenyer, and I'm a volunteer with the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project. So welcome this 31st of May 2026. Welcome back after a little hiatus in broadcasting. I'll get to why that was shortly. But just to let you know, I will be at Tesla Tech at the beginning of August, so look out for some promotional material on that soon. And I will be in the States next week. I will be dropping into Ohio to pick up some samples. And I will also be going down to Indianapolis, I think. Maybe. To also visit another researcher. And then I will be going over to California. Someone wrote to me and said, "Oh, there's this competition on. It's called Flux Capacitor. You should apply for it." It was about 5-6 in the afternoon, and I had to cook for my kids and get everything ready for the evening. And the competition entry had to be in by 2 a.m. in the morning. Anyway, so I finished doing my chores by about 9-10. And I submitted an application, and I got through to the finals. And so I will be in Salesforce Tower at the beginning of next month, and I will give a full 20-minute presentation to the assembled masses. And what I'm looking for is for some support to do some tests on the Kladoff cavitator type of observations of increasing excess heat in cavitation using aluminosilicates. It will be with a view to creating a minimum viable product out of that existing expired patent and related patents. So wish me luck with that. That should be a little bit of fun. And I'll hopefully be meeting up with some people over there stateside in California. So that's that. What else has been happening? Well, we've had a huge amount of developments with the Desmotron. Essentially, they have now been fully replicated from scratch in terms of production, both in the Czech Republic and in Canada. That's with Jan Rack's team at Elia Foundation and with Paul Harris's over in sort of Toronto way, up in the Okanagan Valley. And the test of the ones made by Paul Harris's team were conducted by Griffin himself down in California. And both of the different tubes are very nice iterations on that. But that isn't all of the developments there. What we found down in California was that the form of radiation that comes out of the Desmotron tubes appears to not be able to be hardened. That is to say, when you put materials in front of it, it seems to be the soft stuff that gets through, not the harder radiation, which is counterintuitive. That was confirmed in Prague, both by observation and by Gantt-4 analysis by AJ, who used the latest software that's used at CERN, and found that, yes, the same spectrum seems to get through, but it is at a lower attenuation. Sorry, it's a lower level, but it's the same actual spectrum. It doesn't appear to be hardening. It does appear that it might be softening from David's latest experiments, which need more work. He's got a scintillator rather than what we've been using here in Prague and what we used over in California. In California, we used a cadmium telluride X123 detector. And over in Prague, a Advocam silicon and separately a cadmium telluride camera. This has got 128 by 128 pixels. So it's actually a camera that can see radiation. And I've shared a number of videos on that. But what we did this week is we actually took a pinhole in some lead and we got an image of the source, as it were. And it kind of blew us away, although it's kind of what we kind of expected, which was that from looking down the barrel of the source, as it were, it just looked like a disk. And so the speculation at that point in the afternoon earlier this week was that it is coming from the electrode. But when you looked at it on the side, and maybe I'll be able to show you some images in the coming days, it does look like it's coming from that standing wave node in the center of the tube, which means that this is radically different from the way that X-rays are formed. And moreover, Griffin has confirmed that with a Helmholtz tube, he can focus the beam down to less than a centimeter. And that is not what you can do with light and Helmholtz tube. That means that it must be focusing something that is able to interact with an electromagnetic field and focus it, most likely magnetically aligning it. And these things are coming together to suggest that this really is the formation of charge clusters and their propagation through materials. So my hypothesis right now is that it is that area, as I said before, in that standing wave structure where the clusters are able to build, and some of them get into a neutral state, and as they are being shot forward, and then they go forward or sideways or whatever in a neutral state. And if you have a piece of material, some of them break up and so on, going through this side of the material, but when they come out the other side of the material, there's another impedance change, and they break up here. So they actually produce the same spectrum, but it's just at a lower level. So really, it does look like we're seeing something incredibly different from normal X-ray tubes. Now, many of you may be wondering why I took a bit of a hiatus. Well, one of the main reasons was to finish this book, and very soon I will be able to get the proofs of the fancy version. I have to be very careful because it's going to be very, very expensive to print those, and I can only really afford to do it once. But anyway, this is the spiral bound one, and it's really rather lovely. And it sits on the desk beautifully, and all the images are very clear, and so on. So yeah, I'm very happy with the spiral bound book. Many of you in America and the UK will have got yours by now. I'm going to be picking up a whole bunch of these for the European customers on the way back from America in just over a week's time. So they're already printed, and so there's a couple in Australia, I think, that I need to get out there. But the spiral bound version will be in everyone's hands shortly. And so I wanted to get this finished. So that was part of the reason. But the main reason was in my last day in California, when I was there after doing the tests on Griffin Brock's Desmotron with Paul Harris, my good friend and colleague, Alan Goldwater, and the man himself, Griffin Brock, I was due to leave Alan's Magic Sound Lab at about 10 a.m. And it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I couldn't sleep because I had been given a sample from the event by one Patricia Casaza, and she'd been holding on to this sample for 25 years, and I felt I'm sitting in a room trying to sleep, and there is an SEM in the room, and so I must have a look at the sample. And having met her a number of days before, I said, look, you know, if this event had possibly had this related technology as part of the picture, then we would see these very specific structures called iron-rich crenellated microspheres, and that they would be hollow, and that they would be spewing out stuff sometimes. And what I found within a few seconds of looking at it in Alan's lab was many iron-rich crenellated microspheres, and not just iron-rich balls, but the ones that we have known from many different technologies. And most recently, we found from Chris Chigen's lightning strike sample actually are caused also by real natural lightning in the slug that was in the ground. Again, iron-rich crenellated spheres, semi-regularly spaced with a hole and some material coming out of the back. That was found. I presented that in Bergamo in my one of my 2 conference presentations in Bergamo. And so I was in a state of shock, really, because of the deep responsibility of this information. And I have never cried on public transport, in public. And I could not hold back the tears for about half of my journey back from California. So I have been going through a little bit of trauma. It's one thing to think something. It's a very different thing to try to come to terms with the actual reality rather than your thought of what might be present. That spurred me on to build something that I have wanted for many moons, about 4.5 years, nearly 5 years. And that is a system to look at deep zoom images. And over the last couple of months, you may have seen, basically over the last 3 weeks, you may have seen, let's put it that way, I have been publishing very regularly, sometimes on a daily or even faster cadence than daily, on this blog over here, which I will show you now, on the blog about this deep zoom image production and publishing system. And deep zoom images were designed as a way for like mapping and allowing fairly incapable hardware to be able to delve into extremely high gigapixel images. And it's basically what you see in Google Maps. Now, it was bought by Microsoft, and it was basically abandoned in 2008, 2009 and made open source. And that's good for us because that has enabled a whole range of systems to be built around this technology. And there is actually one that I've shared before for the actual microscope images that I've been taking over the last several years. And it comes free as a PC software. It looks a bit Windows 95, I have to say, and it's extremely limited functionality and not very friendly to use with basic measurements. But it was only available for PC. It didn't allow people to share their findings in any reasonable way, not the kind of open source kind of interaction community kind of investigation that I was trying to see come, and I had given up on waiting for the microscope manufacturers to build such a system. But basically, Walt came across this Walt Brabowski guy who is a scientist but also an artist. He came across the beautiful DZI images, or one of them that I had shared in the past, and he suggested that why not give it a go. And so I had some conversations, and I said, you know, all the tools are out there to have a go at this now, so why don't we have a go? So Jan Rack, in combination with AJ at Elliott Foundation, took a little bit of programming and some work by Walt Brabowski and just got something basically working with re-engineered DZI images. And so that kind of was that Walt got the ball rolling, and there was a little bit of action by Jan and AJ, so thank you for that start of a 10. And so I then decided to see, well, you know, I've got some fairly high memory computers. Can I design the program as I've done many times in the past? I've designed all kinds of programs, both developed programs in-house for 3D animation control, image processing, all kinds of things. I've guided programmers, I've paid programmers. Half the time I'd pay a programmer and then they would not get the job done before my money ran out, and I'd end up either having to learn the programming myself and then fixing the program or abandoning the project. So that's happened quite a few times, and it's not that I couldn't do it. It's that I didn't want to dedicate my life to programming. But I was very good at bug testing. I was always doing the bug testing and the program design. So I thought I'd have a go at installing some local LLMs, and in combination with Grok and local LLMs in what do you call it? LM Studio. Because I've got some fairly decent RAM in my computer, I was able to build the first week and a half or 2 weeks worth of versions of the software, and all basically offline and working with those LLMs, and it was pretty buggy. It was not doing what I was asking a lot of the time, but I could, it was like herding a sheep, but I could get it in there. And already in that process, I was learning that basically programming is essentially dead. It's as a skill set, it comes down to, are you an expert in the field of what you want to achieve? Do you know what's necessary for the piece of software to meet the requirements of a particular field? And do you have anything that you can bring to the table in terms of concepts of how the solution could be given? Because, you know, if you knew how to verbalize what you wanted to achieve, and you knew how to bug test, and you could see whether it's going in the right direction or not, essentially the vast majority of the programming, all bar a few parameters, now is essentially done by the LLM. And then when it started to get really, really complicated, and I was waiting for increasing amounts of time for the response from my local system, and sometimes I would have to go through half a day's worth of failed responses to hone the message. I then took a membership on Claude, which did cost some money, some actual cash out of my pocket rather than life. So some labor exchange tokens rather, or life exchange tokens rather than actual life. And I was able to then work at a slightly faster pace because I wasn't relying on my local system churning through the tokens. Still limited by the fact that I wasn't going to take a very expensive membership to Claude, but it was enough so that I could do some work, and then when I ran out of tokens, I could go and do something else that I needed to do. So yeah, programming is dead. And I had a talk with a guy. I actually went and took the kids gold mining this weekend, up in a place called Gold Mountain here in the Czech Republic. And we went panning in a river called Gold River. And I don't know if you can see, but there was a few flakes in there, which at some point we'll throw on an SEM. But let's say you're not going to get rich doing that. But anyway, it was fun, and I thought I'd do it. As I said to the guy, I said, I want to do this whilst it's still an interesting thing to do, because once we're synthesizing gold, it's not going to be a very interesting thing to do. So I want to thank, we've already had one donation. Thank you. Follow the rabbit. That's very rabbit hole. That's very kind of you for that $10 donation. Okay, so on the flip side, I would not have done this work had those tools not been available. So what I'm giving out here is the system that I wanted to be developed. And often, like the Phenom XL microscope that I've been using for nearly 4 years now, all kinds of bugs, all kinds of things that need to be improved. I would suggest to the people that we were renting it off that could they reach out to Thermo Fisher Scientific and suggest that this should be done in this way, and so on. And then maybe 18 months later, they'd move the dialogue whilst it was, for instance, imaging a piece of the sample. It would move it from the center, which is the bit that you actually want to be looking at, to off center. and I'd have to wait 18 months for that. And you know, I'm so frustrated because like as someone who's done programming and worked with programmers, this is not a complicated thing to move a panel, you know, a countdown timer effectively from the center of the screen to the side. And so what I now have is when I can see a feature is not working or not in the way that I imagined it, I can just basically describe it better and maybe draw some sketches or whatever, and I can get it implemented in the kind of correct way very, very quickly. Okay, so yeah, it's exciting because there's many other tools I would like to develop that I've been craving for over the years, and I will be able to make those tools. Now, this has taken me about 18-hour days. My wife, in part, the reason I wanted to take my family away is because they've been suffering on me working very, very hard to get this done. In part, I had to get this done so quickly because I wanted a tool that congressmen and people of various skills in scientific technology could, with available computer, laptop or tablet, explore this rich data. Because I had to give a presentation, and I'll be giving another presentation to Mick Harrison, who is one of the lawyers that are going to try and explore with the US government on the event. And he's in a data and hypothesis gathering mode, so full respect to him, but I wanted to make sure I could do the best job possible in that conversation. So thank you for the 34 people who have joined me for this session. That's pretty impressive given the hiatus. Hi Chauxis and Tammy, Ashara. Hi Gordon Doherty is in the house. Ken Pratt, Arubaga, Misunderstood also. And we have Odd Lex. And who else? Who do we have? Overwound Games, thank you for joining us. Corky Goss, wonderful, wonderful, thank you for joining me back. EBB2421, thank you very much. Loser272727, I'm glad your handle is not I'm a loser, yes I am, yes I am. That would be quite fun, but there we go. Hi Ian McClelland, hi Ron Koblenz. Wonderful. So yeah, if you're the guy in how should we put this, in Ohio that has a sample to give me of something, then reach out to me and I'll see if I can find a way to get it from you. I'm going to be visiting the guy. What's his name? He is near Cleveland. He's basically doing some cavitation work. He's trying to build an open source cavitator. So I'll be recording some video there and seeing his shop there. And then I'll be going down and visiting one of the world's leaders in homopolar generators down in Indiana. So I think it's going to be quite an interesting thing there. Okay, so let's go back to this. So yeah, what I've been doing is sharing with you as it's developed here. This is the thing that you can go and click on to get the viewer. And so basically the most important thing was to be able to find features of interest and be able to share that information. So that was my early focus. And then I wanted to share the things that I'd found in the SEM, and there are more things to share, by the way. I just wanted to build the system. So when I got enough to put things in, I built this point of interest system. And then I built some scripts to, or rather, I focused on building some measurement tools and some unique measurement tools like this polygon area tool. This is not a tool that you can get readily on the microscope. And also this cylinder volume tool. Again, it's not something that you can get on these microscopes readily. And then I kind of like built these a marker system where you can see them, and we'll go through all of this. And then I built some scripts to take the output, which is not very elegant, in the microscope and build these attractive, straight to the point panels that will come up under an analysis point panel. So I need to improve this a bit, but essentially what it will be is when people are using these microscopes, it will export a set of directories, and this Python script will look at those directories and automatically create all the HTML, dump it into a folder, and then the code that I've got will look into that folder and build a whole set of analysis points, and then you can define where they are on the sample, and so it ties it in so you can see what you're doing. Yeah, and then I built this notation system, and the idea was that I wanted anyone in the world to be able to interact with these rich data sets and be able to produce notation for the things that they find in those data sets in such a way that it presents very nicely in the viewer, but it is built from very simple CSV. That it is a comma-separated data format, which they could export and send to their colleagues or people in the open science space as a very low numbers of kilobytes for many data points via email, or even into some sort of collective folder. And so I built that, and then I wanted the color matching. So right from the outset, my intention was when I did this SEM, in the same day, I took a series of macro photography images. I didn't have my stack focus rail, so it was less than perfect. But really, I just wanted two things, and this is when the whole conversation was, I want to build this tool. And having these two matched together really gives you a better feel for what the material is. And so we built a switcher in there. And in fact, I'm going to build switchers so that we can have different ways of visualizing the data, not just color imagery, but also elemental overlays and stuff. But those things are to come. And then I built a system where you could put into a basic CSV table and it would build a nice, elegant looking table on the screen. And then that, if you put in YouTube links, it would embed those in and you could view them in the viewer. But all it was a YouTube link you copied in. So anyone can build these very rich data comments and share them with very low amounts of data. Then the measurement panel, I really went to town on. And allowed you to edit it. You'll see now that in the editing, you can actually edit the position that's saved as well. So even if someone hasn't done a very good job of choosing the framing of the bit of interest, then you can adjust that later. And it does change slightly with different people's computer screen layouts. And then I started thinking about reporting, because the reporting is actually quite terrible in many of these pieces of software. And I've always been unsatisfied by the ridiculous amount of time it takes to do the reporting in these pieces of software, and also the quality of the imagery. And what I also wanted is, for instance, if you had done a macro photography of the slide, and we're going to do the Brock electrode as well, and having the color image to the side of the actual SEM image would be a very powerful way of showing the data. And then I really got down to making it easy for people to use and adding in very, very advanced features like statistics, strip charts, things like there's a guy who is very keen on getting justice for those many people that have suffered cancers, particularly of the lung, due to asbestosis and related conditions because of particulates from the event. And so I built into the system the WHO standards for fibers from asbestos. so that those that are found that are in that range can be highlighted. And there's a whole guide system built in that shows you how to use the tools and why the tools are there and so forth. And then I introduced this massive feature here, which allows people to view using the online, don't have to install it with anything, their own local DZIs. This means that you can download any of the DZIs that I have shared over the years, and you can load them in here off your local computer and view them and start to do measurements on them. And so I will be sharing more of those, and some of them that I will be putting in as default ones available. The problem is that it turns out that DZIs have tens of thousands of files sometimes. And in fact, like, I think the Patricia 2001 has something like 80,000 files. And it turns out that my hosting provider only allows 250,000 files per contract with them. So if I put too many of these DZIs online, in the sense that they're actually already able to be loaded just by clicking on a button, then I will completely lose the ability to have any other thing shared on my web hosting service. Hi Towiggle, hi Silo X, hi WTC Jazz. It's great to have you here in the chat. Hi John QE1N as well. Okay, so let me just view. Okay, I'm just going to have my controlling switch. I'm even forgetting what I'm doing here. Okay, and then I added in things to enhance the tools themselves. So what I've now got is, and you'll see this when we run through it, we've got external angles, so you can automatically work out the internal angles from the external angle minus 100, from taking that from 180 degrees, and also the lengths of all sides of the various measurement tools. So you've got like a multiple tools in one. You can turn those off if you don't want to see them, if it's too busy for you. But again, we've advanced from this by quite some margin with the new features, which are actually already published, so you can go and use them right now. Okay, so without further ado, I will pull up the tool itself and we can have a play with it. So I'm looking at this locally. However, you can, it's basically fields of, in fact, I'll go online first. So essentially you go to, oh, what's happened there? Typical. It's opened in another window and it's disappeared. Okay, great. Lovely. It's gone down there. Why did it go down there? Okay, that's not what I want either. Excuse me. Okay. So the live site is here. It's starfire.tech/Patricia-2001, and we're going to be calling this DZI viewer and measurement system Patricia 2001 after the sample and the person that finally got me to make this viewer. And when you go to Patricia 2001, it'll give you the option to load these three things or to open a DZI from your local folder. And maybe we'll look at some files that I've got on the open folder, on local folders, after I've gone through the tool itself. So when you look at these, it'll tell you whether it's got a color and an SEM. It'll also tell you whether it's got an analysis points and a points of interest. And the system will respond to which various features that are in the data set that you're loading in. In the future, I will be adding some of the analysis points and points of interest to the DHX2 and to the Matsumoto S71 replication, possibly also a color version to the Matsumoto S71 replication. Okay, so we will go to the Patricia sample here. Now, this is the first time that I've actually scanned a full microscope slide at such a high, or rather microscope stub at such a high resolution. And because the particles are coming out of the carbon tape quite some distance, I put it on autofocus. And that actually allowed me to discover a terrible bug with their software. That is to say, when it's auto-focusing and it doesn't see anything in the center of the field of view to focus, it'll just pick a random thing and leave it at that. It just gives up. It doesn't keep, like, it didn't say, oh, well, last time I was focusing, I had this beautifully in focus, and I can't find anything to focus on in this, so I'm going to step back to this one. No, it didn't do that. It just leaves it at some random focus point, which is really rather terrible. And so that needs to be fixed. Unfortunately, it's baked into this particular image. However, when there's nothing really on the data, you can actually contrast that out by using the brightness and contrast, but just the contrast here. So we can dial that down here. And that's all we have to look at here. Okay, so that's good, right? So we don't have to see anything there. It looks much better with that done. Now I'll just run through the measurement tools here. I'll run through the things in the interface. So the first thing is the brightness contrast. Then this capture overlays. This allows you to have the measurement bar. Sorry, the measurement you've made yourself. So if I put a long slag wall fiber here, this is the longest fiber on the slide. When we do a capture of this, it will leave that measurement on top. If we leave that selected, if we turn it off and capture this image, it will not. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about this capture button here. If we turn off the scale bar, it will not have the scale bar down here. If we turn off the XY zoom and field of view, it'll turn off this feature down the bottom here. And if we turn off the description, and the description is under my face here, we can move this around and we can rescale it. It's just a small little description in this point. It says, this near 2mm slag wool fiber is the longest in a sample stub with high consistency in diameter and straightness. Okay, so that's just my comment here. And we can look at some more complicated ones when we come to look at the editing later. But essentially, we can include this description in the position that we arrange it. So if I see that it only needs to be small and it needs to be under here, and we can go like that, and we can actually put that under there. And when we grab that, we'll have the measurement, the scale bar, the XY and zoom, and the field of view, and the description. So I click capture there, and in theory, it will capture it, and we'll have an image, and we can save that to somewhere. We'll save it into our downloads, and let's see if we can see that image there. I've got it there, so I'm going to pop it up, and that's our, because I've gone full screen, I can't drag it over here, so we'll just, okay. So that's our image there that we've just captured, and you can see that's an image. So you can like do some measurement and then send the image of your measurement to a third party alongside the CSV that includes the data for that measurement. So yeah, that is what you can do with the capture functionality on the tool. And you know, I could go to the local version, but I'm just going to use the online version here, and we'll look at that. So you can turn that off. You don't need to see that the whole time. In fact, all of these things you can turn off. And to find out what the keystrokes are, you can hit this question mark with your keyboard, or you can hit the button here, and it comes up with the keyboard shortcuts here. So all of the keyboard shortcuts for controlling the interface. There's also a copyright notice, Bob Greenyer 2026 down here, just for the sake of it. And I do ask that if anyone finds this tool helpful in their work, they could do me the honor of subscribing for free or otherwise to my Substack. Or if they want to, they can make a direct donation to my life costs, which would be helpful. You know, no one's done it so far, and I don't really expect anyone to. There's always a great capacity for using rather than helping things to be created. But that's not going to stop me from sharing this, and that's just the way I'm wired, unfortunately, for me. But there we go. You can find out how you can support the effort down there in the question mark if you wish to. So basically, you can actually zoom into things by using the plus and minus key, and it's quite fun to zoom around some of these images, not necessarily this one particularly. But if I clear this, and you can go delete to clear measurements and close that little window. Where your mouse pointer is, I can zoom in, okay? And for those people that are gamers, yeah, you can use WASD here. And unfortunately, A actually brings up other things, but you can use WASD when, particularly on ones that don't have A and P enabled, okay? But you can zoom in and out readily like that. So, okay. So that is that. So that's the capture button and zooming around the interface. It's very nice to do on a tablet. You can pinch to zoom and swipe around the interface and the samples. Here we can see some of our little iron-rich crenellated spheres. Nice little one tucked in there. It looks like it's got a round bit over here and a round bit over here that was associated with it. And before we go and look at the opening files over here, the little file folder, we can click on the color one here and it shows what it is in color. Now the color image is 1/4 of the resolution in this particular one. So we can't really see this ball here. It's just a little shiny bit here. Actually, the zoom is limited on your scroll wheel or pinch, but you can actually sometimes zoom in even further by using the plus and minus, although it does snap back. So this bit here is actually that ball, this ball. But this one you can actually see. It's this shiny bit here. So sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. If you hit the H key, it goes to full view. There's a very large ball down here, which I think I call the large ball. And this one you can very clearly see when we switch to the color. Okay, there's a slight little mismatch here, but I've got a piece of thing in there, so to correct for that. Okay. So I will quickly go to the file folder here, and we can choose a different DZI. This is DHX2. So these are our little magnetohydrodynamic structures that have collapsed. And so you can go and have a look at those. And we might use this to do some measurements of various things here in a minute. You can see one of its children came out here and another one broke out here. Okay. And you can learn about how these structures are interacting with their environment. I do hope to do a much higher resolution DZI of part of this sample, but looking at a much larger area. This is only a few millimeters squared, and you know, I think we can learn a lot more by having a much larger sample area. Okay, and then we've got another one from the replication we did in Matsumoto's. Now, I might clean this up. What happened here is this was the area that I selected, this big black box down the bottom, but the software on the computer that was running the microscope crashed, and so this is how far it got with stitching. I don't know whether the capture files are there. If the capture files are there, I might be able to manually reconstruct this and have them. But this here is the main focus of the, I think it was 40 millisecond or 800 millisecond pulse of 120 volts AC from a 1 millimeter diameter lead wire. And this is Matsumoto's S71 experiment, one of his, if not his most favorite experiment. And because it has copper, which is like here as a mid-gray, and the wire was lead, which is the white, the synthesized material, the carbon and other elements in the lighter part of the spectrum come out as very black, like this. And you can see one of the spheres with a hole in it here very clearly. But up here you can see some of the material spewing out of one of these structures. And so this is things like potassium and carbon and stuff. So it's very black. So the witness material is a mid-gray on the SEM. The lead is this white structures, these white spheroid-like structures, and the products of the reaction are black. So this is a very, very good experiment for seeing the difference in contrast. Now, I actually have a DZI of this, or at least images of this, after the best part of 6 or 7 months. And you see these incredible copper carbonate crystals coming out of all of these different tendrils. So you expect to see that in the coming weeks and days. And if I can align them, I will add it as another SEM. So there will be 2 SEMs taken several months apart, or like half a year or in maybe 3/4 of a year apart. And you can see what's happened to the witness plate over time, just left to its own devices as these beautiful copper carbonate crystals have popped out. The problem is that you can't see these incredible structures, which we're going to do some measurements on later, where the ball-like structures sometimes came in and crashed, and you can see these little toroids that have come out at this point. I can maybe zoom into that using the keyboard here a little bit further. Yeah, so we've got these toroidal-like structures that have come out here in this particular blown-up one. But in many cases, the structure blew up, so you've got all these little fragments around, and then it does a smear one way and a smear the other way. And there's a fantastic number of them very clearly up in this top right-hand corner, and we're going to look at those later. So when these are all the fragments of the lead sphere as it crashed into the surface, and this is the synthesized material that was inside. So it leaves these kind of like broad brush strokes either side of the explosion. You can see a fragment of the lead ball here, which is really rather nice to look at. Okay, so that is that. Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to go back into the... we may look at opening local images from the online viewer here. This is the online viewer, the one you can all look at. Oh, by the way, before we do that, there's a go full screen button here. So if you click that, it goes full screen, and you just get an immersive view of the viewer in there. And yeah, so that is that. And the scale bar here, by the way, is calibrated. That's calibrated. That is actually the real scale from the pixels. And I will share tools that will allow you to take pictures of your artwork and tile them into a massive piece of data. And then using a Python script, you'll be able to create a deep zoom image. Now, if you put onto that image in one place an actual measurement rule, yeah, on X and Y grid, you can then pull that into Photoshop and work out the pixels to millimeters or pixels to micrometers of your image, and you can insert that into a small XML file. But I'll try and make it as easy as possible for you. I might even make a whole XML writer software so that you just type in this is the image, this is the thing, and it'll actually write the XML for you. I think I'll do that. And then you'll be able to load your own artwork or your own megapixel photos or composite photos into this tool and be able to measure all of the features in there. So I want to make this flexible enough for almost anyone to use in their work for demonstrating the power of deep analysis through calibrated imagery of gigapixel level. Okay, so we're going to go back to the actual main Patricia 2001 sample. And by the way, of the total amount of samples that I've looked at so far, I think if I can find something here, the area, the total area of the sample that I've looked at so far in California and here in Europe, I think is probably no more than half of the area of the inside of a USB-C stick. So if you want to know how little the material is, it would occupy about half the area of the inside. Not the volume, the area. And so, you know, given enough years, I could go through all of the sample, but you certainly get a good amount of analysis done from such a small piece of the material. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to show you the basic N tool here. This is navigate to position. And this is really for people who are inexperienced with the tool and they just want to have a quick, dirty look around the sample. So they like what this is, and they go, let's switch to the color, and you can see it's all very red, and you can't see because I'm not showing you. Okay, so this is the SEM, and we like this feature, and we click here, and we can see this is red and orange, and this is darker red. This actually is basically various types of rust, and you'll learn to see what rust looks like, but it has these little kind of particular types of shapes of structure. This is really dirty rust, but let's say we like this, and we can just click save, and then we can hit H to go full screen again, and we go, oh, we like this one. We're going to have a look at that one. Yeah, let's see what that looks like under color. It looks like that. Okay, this is all loading live off the web. You can go and have a look at this yourself. I'm going to hit H again. Let's go and have a look up here. We're going to see something up here. Oh, we like this. What's this? We're going to have a look at this. What's that? That little drop there. Okay. And we're going to look at the color. Oh, look, it's a piece of glassy, shiny stuff. So we like that. Yeah, we're going to have a look at that. Go H again, and maybe there's something that, oh, look at these. These are called slag wool shots. So what happens is a foundry, and we're going to have a look at this in a minute, it's pretty amazing. A foundry that's producing, let's say, pig iron or basic iron, they will look at the slag that comes on the top, very low iron content. They take that off, and then they crush it up, and then they put it into another carbon arc furnace, and they pour the molten silicates out onto extremely fast, thousands of RPM wheels with a high-speed jet, and it blows this slag wool. And in the buildings that were, let's say, damaged during the event, the vast majority of the fireproofing and the heat insulation was done with slag wool. And this is a typical thing that you get with slag wool. Now, the interesting thing about slag wool, and I'm going to make this as a new measurement, is that sometimes it can have metal inclusions. Now, it has a lot of metal inclusions in there. It's not good slag wool. That is to say, it will not be good at fireproofing or soundproofing. And we'll talk about this a little bit more later. But when we look at this on this slag wool, it's not part of the slag wool, but it's certainly attached, at least in this point. We can see some iron spheres here. Not our classic form, possibly our classic form on here. But when you see the process that slag wool, how it's made, you'll know that possibly it could be making these things as well. Okay, so I've got my 3 points here. Now, when I click on my 3 points again, I can go to the full image here, but I can also go to that point, to that point, to that point, and to that point. Okay, so I can go back to the color. I didn't actually record the last one, so I'm going to go clear. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to go, where was it? Full image. Let me go down here, and we go clear, and we go save in that position. So in theory, this should work. Ah, I found a bug. I found a bug. So my navigate positions is now broken. All right, this is what you do when you find bugs. This is where you can help. So First call to action. Make sure the functions still do what they used to do when you changed it. I actually know how this bug will have occurred. It's because of some of the other calibration features that I added later. But anyway, that's a bug. So we found a bug. So you can't use those as reliably as I would have liked now. But you could in the past, but you can't now. So we found a bug. Right, so let me note that for later. I'm going to note where there's a bug on navigate to position. So this is where you can help by actually looking at the software and seeing if it's doing what you expect it to do. So bug. Okay. All righty. Right, so that's navigate to position. Then we got points of interest. Now, in the points of interest, if you roll over a image, it will actually show the image that is there. Now, when you're building your own local viewer, you can have the DZI that you built in a directory. And so what that does is it has the tile that is produced by the Python script. Don't worry, I'll make all these things very trivial for you to know how to do. So I'll have the tile and a DZI and a little piece of text that then tells the viewer what the pixel dimensions are and the calibration, if you've got calibration and so forth. And that is the bulk of it. Then I'm adding these directories like the P directory, and it's literally a directory named P. And in the directory named P, you can go through and find positions of things in the sample. You can find those positions, and you can then record those XY positions by looking at it down here, or you can save a measurement out, or you can save it out using the navigate to position. Okay, so and then you put those positions into the file name at the beginning. Now, it's all described in the manual how to do that, but then you just drop an image named with the X, Y, and zoom at the start, and then the name of the file, and it'll automatically appear in this list here, which you can search. So if I want to find magnetic, it'll automatically find that particular one, okay? If I want to point grain here, I'll find the grain boundary void one here, okay? And you can close out your search. Okay, so what do we got here? We've got intergranular and transgranular fractures, both driven by a process consuming the metal and a generation of reaction products. So this is interesting. So the balls, I'm saying, possibly could be produced from the slag wool furnace process. And so this means that any theory that might require iron-rich spheres could be potentially dismissed by the fact that the slag wool, which you see in the sample, which was in the buildings, in all of the buildings and all of the floors, that fire retarding and soundproofing, that could have produced these iron-rich spheres, and I need to do a study of those kind of slag walls to see if that is the case. But certainly the process is, and you will see that the process is possible to do that. That means that any theory that is saying that they are a signature of what was responsible for the event probably is called into question. However, what you're seeing here and basically when I go back here, if you use the close arrow here, you can literally step through all of the things you've got on here. I can just go step forward and back using back close bracket and forward, open bracket and close bracket, open bracket, close bracket. Now, this was a huge shock to me, because this particular metal crystal that this comes from, I actually broke. I broke it by my finger pressure of putting it on the microscope. So here it is under the color. Unfortunately, I haven't got the stack focusing on this, but I've since taken another image on here, which you can possibly see. I think I've even got it. I might have put it down here. No, I haven't got it. But it has rust on one bit that broke off, and then this crystal structure broke up, and it revealed a clean area, which was formally inside the larger chunk of metal. And the fact that I could break this with finger pressure is pretty striking to me. That means the structural integrity of this iron was so compromised that just the pushing of my finger was sufficient to cause it to fragment. Now, the size of the fragments are extremely small, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. But anyway, why is this so interesting, this particular image? Because this is what was observed by one Takaaki Matsumoto, and is in his book, Steps to the Discovery of Electronuclear Collapse. And it was discovered in 1991, and it was submitted to Fusion Technology on September the 21st, 1990. Okay, September the 21st, 1990 here. Okay, and inside his palladium electrode, he found that the metal grains were being eaten away. This is a polished sample along the crystal grain boundary, okay? And ultimately, it was eating away the crystals, and he does this diagram here of the progression of the micro-ball lightning process, which he later understood it was. He also shows, in his overview of the effect on page 90, that stuff goes into a point of electronuclear collapse here, and it comes through a wormhole, and material comes out as hydrogen, which you can't see on EDS, which he mostly used, carbon and oxygen, and then on the outside you get heavier elements forming. Okay, hydrogen, carbon and oxygen. And that is very interesting because the analysis of this particular sample shows that when metal is consumed, if I get rid of my mugshot, when metal is consumed, then you see the increase in carbon and oxygen. So I'm looking at two spots on the outside here. Where it's darker, it's got more lighter elements. So spot 2 here has less carbon and less oxygen than spot 1, which is darker and which is nearer this area, and that has a higher concentration. And then what happens is, as the iron is consumed, it goes down as the hole gets bigger. What I'm looking at is the concentration in these light spots here. And as the iron goes down, as the hole gets bigger, the iron concentration in the white spot, the copper goes up. Moreover, the carbon slightly goes up. The oxygen goes up and down, or rather down and up, and inversely proportional is the sulfur goes up and down rather than down and up. Now, we know that it produces lighter elements and heavier elements, this process. This has been found in the earliest palladium deuterium experiments, been found in the exploding wires of Leonid Oritskev in around 2000, and so on. And you can see when it's a small hole, there's some nickel there, but then it's mostly copper when we get the bigger and bigger holes, and it gets more copper relative to the iron. So I suggest potentially that the yin-yang process is going on. Iron is being progressed through to copper, and the energy for that in the least action process is mostly going to desynthesize the matter into hydrogen, helium, hydrogen isotopes, helium, carbon, oxygen, and then oxygen is fusing to sulfur. And then when we get up to the large area that's consumed here, we're actually seeing some calcium formed. So the elements down here are actually synthesized elements from the energy that's yielded by the fusion. And again, once the lighter elements, they can then fuse back up. And so it's a yin-yang process. So it's pretty amazing to see it. And of course, the only other example of this effect causing metal to have holes in it or to be severely disrupted was described in the Electric Spacecraft Journal and the journal in the previous year by George Hathaway, and that was the Hutchison effect. The Hutchison effect saw copper come somehow magically out of the solid solution in this bent iron bar. And if it was ever in solution in the first place. So George Hathaway is covering all grounds and saying like maybe there was no copper in there in the first place. And we're going to talk about the importance of copper because we've seen it. You'll see it through all of our experiments over many, many years. Copper is a little bit of magic going on in this process. But it's not just the formation of the heavier element. He's saying here, I've not seen another apparatus that makes the alloying material in the alloy come out of solid solution. Usually it's totally dispersed in the melt, but in this case we're undispersing it somehow. So basically this was in 1991. This was said in the Electric Spacecraft Journal about John Hutchison's thing, which saw the same effect, which we've actually replicated by the way, in Vega experiments, these sort of crystal grain boundary synthesis of carbon and by eating away at the metal. And it was in the same year, in 1990, that one Matsumoto also took his electrodes from that experiment. And indeed, he found that by heating it up in a mass spectrometer here, this is also in 1991 in fusion technology, he saw the synthesis of lighter elements like lithium, and also helium and deuterium and tritium, and also neon. He also found neon. So we got neon, we got tritium here, we got helium and lithium and deuterium here. Okay, so he's getting these light hydrogen isotopes and synthesized elements up from the deuterium. Of course, he got deuterium in there because it's got used heavy water. And then in his actual SEM analysis of these samples, he found, oh, by the way, he found copper. He found copper, he found calcium, and he found sulfur. Copper, calcium, and sulfur. What are we seeing in this sample along the crystal grain boundaries from the broken material? Well, we are seeing copper here. We are seeing calcium, and we are seeing sulfur. Of course, he's also seeing oxygen here. And he's also seeing carbon. You know, you can't get away with it. There's always carbon there, right? It always gets synthesized, okay? I was trying to show you there. Okay. So essentially we have a process somehow going on during the event. Which has only been observed in 1991, 1990 in analysis of Hutchison effect samples and in cold fusion. So why, oh why? So I do have another explanation for this, that Patricia Casaza is secretly very good at either the Hutchison effect, she might be, or she's very, very, very good at replicating a version of Matsumoto's work, and then throwing that into an unbroken crystal inside a sample of which I randomly select something from. Yeah. Maybe she's either very good at the Hutchison effect or she's very good at cold fusion. Or there is another explanation for this thing that's never had an explanation since it was seen by George Hathaway in the 1980s. Maybe there's another innocent explanation. But where it gets even more interesting is, that's Patricia, by the way, when she handed the sample to me. Delightful lady there in Newark, in New Jersey. And so maybe there's also this explanation will explain why we have semi-regularly spaced holes and that they are polygonal, many of them. So we have an 8-sided structure here. We have a 7-sided, a 5-sided, another 5-sided, another 5-sided, a 4-sided, this 6-sided, very clear 6-sided here. And again, within these, on one face only, or as a rod, we have this synthesized material containing copper. My friends, the people that have followed my work over the last near 10 years since I had my epiphany about potentially what was the cause of the event, we are at a watershed moment. We have a technology which potentially can, if we want an electrified world, we need more copper. This process produces copper from iron. It also produces energy from iron. That's going to upset a lot of nuclear scientists because they all say it's the end of the energy road. But right here, right now, we are seeing it produces energy. Some of that energy is used to create elements that you can consume easily and will be part of your body. Things like carbon, hydrogen isotopes, and oxygen. In fact, with carbon, hydrogen isotopes, and oxygen, and calcium, and sulfur, that's a good proportion of what your body is. That's a good proportion of what your body is. Now, imagine you have a process that is in between the crystal grain boundaries and in channels like this is producing extreme amounts of gas in the form of hydrogen isotopes. That alone produces what's called hydrogen embrittlement of metal. Now, if you take hydrogen at pressure and you put it into a steel pressure vessel, don't expect that steel pressure vessel to be good after about 3 years. The hydrogen gets in between the crystal grains and starts causing what's called hydrogen embrittlement of metals. Hydrogen embrittlement metals, go and look it up. What you're seeing here, though, is we know that the apple is the thing that does most of the magic in these processes. The apple is the part of the magnetohydrodynamic structure that does the interaction with the materials. What we're seeing here around the channels, which, by the way, look exactly like the magnetic fluid channels in the Vega experiment, and exactly like the magnetic fluid of this ferrofluid by Lyndon Gledhill. Around these channels, where the heavier elements are being synthesized, down here, this bottom left, where I'm wiggling my mouse pointer, you can see it down there. There's a heavier element there, and so on. You can see it's darker around these channels, and then it's lighter in the gap well between these channels. That, in my view, is suggesting that oxygen and carbon, which is what this high concentration of darker leads to this darker color, is bleeding out, possibly into the fabric of the metal itself. So you have oxygen, likely neon, likely helium and hydrogen isotopes coming out from converting that iron into nickel and copper. The energy yield from that is then synthesizing these lighter elements that are then forcing those crystal grains apart. So not only do you have less physical metal bonds at the crystal grain boundaries, you literally have unimaginable pressures. And you have seen that, my friends. You saw that when we applied a Marsa gas for a few seconds to tungsten. And the tungsten had these spheres of material appear underneath the tungsten. The sphere of, let's say, calcium, all of the structures were calcium. The atomic volume of an atom of calcium is much larger than the atomic volume of one atom. So one atom of calcium is much larger physically than one atom of tungsten. And so you imagine trillions of atoms, and they just literally inflate and smash that tungsten apart. And then in the filter back in 2019, we caught some of those fragments, which, by the way, were not yellow tungsten oxide. The fumes were white. The fumes were white. There was some heat being produced because it was in the hundreds of degrees, not in the thousands of degrees like the color would give you the impression of, but in the bolometer it was seeing hundreds of degrees, and it very localized to the rod. And then it's causing this white fuming, which we caught into the face mask, and that face mask in between its fibers had chunks of tungsten, not melted, fragmented. And around that chunk of tungsten, you had the same synthesized elements that were synthesized in the tungsten exposed to the Mars gas. And we know that Mars gas does this same HHO type of cold transmutation of metals. We know it. We know that from Yul Brown's work. We know it from other work. Okay, so lots of gas, lots of compromising of the metal. Like the concentration of oxygen in this metal grain boundary. If we go here, in this dark area here, the concentration of oxygen, this concentration of oxygen would make steel basically useless. Would be basically useless, right? So this is not strong steel. And that is what at least we know we've got in the crystal grain boundaries. And it gets worse and worse the more that it's consumed, because you literally have a hole next to where you're trying to attach. Look at all the holes here. And I can show you a Hutchison sample that I have analyzed. And I've already shared images in many presentations already. It is in this vial. It is in this vial. It's the one on this side here. And that is the fragmented steel from the 1980s work of John Hutchison. And on there, you see what Tom Bearden calls monopoles. Tom Bearden says monopoles go into the steel and they cause it to fragment into layers. Now, it's not just that it's caused it to fragment in between the crystal grains. You can see here that these holes are caused it to fragment inside the crystal, to fragment inside the crystal, in between where it's being compromised by these structures. And in fact, indeed, on the edge, maybe you can see it. I don't know if I have it here. I can actually go to the SEM and show you. Okay, I don't have it here. If I go to the SEM here, and we go up here, it's not just that it's fragmenting between the crystal grain boundaries, it's actually what's called spalling here, spalling. This is it coming apart, and I have this in a higher resolution, and I'll add this image on in due course. But these cracks you see are within the crystal grain boundary. So this is fragmenting. Yeah, Estonia's, it's not 3000 degrees. You can go and look at the studies we did, which were recorded on video with bolometer. It's just not 3000 degrees. The color is, what you're looking at is ionization of atoms. And it's when the new atom gets born out of these structures, it doesn't have any electrons at all. So you get all of the electrons being grabbed from the environment, and it produces incredibly bright light, particularly since it would the sister product of the formation of calcium from the fissioning of tungsten is xenon, and xenon produces extremely white light, okay, because it has a lot of spectral lines, okay. So it's just not hot in that sense. We got the same intense tungsten filament at 2500 degrees type of white light from indium. And indium melts at 156.6 degrees centigrade. It was only 75 microns thick. And you can see on the high-speed camera, it goes to a piece of jelly before transmuted elements, including carbon, get formed. And then the carbon then stops the coherence in the Mars gas, and that causes it to be thermally hot. And at that point, it then melts the indium. So very, very different process going on. Okay. So this is what rust looks like, by the way. Right, this is rust. And I can show you, it's nice and red. Oh, I can show you here. That's rust, and it's nice and red. Rust, red. Not rust, lovely silvery and shiny. Now, it might be pearlite in this sense, in this state, maybe. But that is the difference between a rusty piece of steel, and of course, what this does is, you can see it in many places here. you get these red-grey chips, or sometimes orange-grey chips if it's got paint on. So here is an orange-grey chip. And actually, we can actually look at this in a point of interest here. This orange-grey chip here, you can see that the elemental analysis shows that it's got a fairly high concentration of titanium here. By atomic percent, it's on the map there, it's 10.15, but actually over here, it's atomic percent. Okay, so it's 12.19. So this titanium is a white, titanium oxide is a white pigment, and so if you have iron oxide and titanium oxide in a paint, it will end up being orange. But you can see the paint's come off this end and it's giving you this grey chip. And in this case, the grey chip looks to me, under the SEM, to be spalled iron. So you're getting spalled iron and fragmented at the crystal grain boundaries with the paint that was on top. Okay, so and you can see over here there's orange grey chips as well. Here look, or red grey chips. They're red, grey, red, you know, and I think what you're just seeing in this case is rust and not rust, and rust and not rust. Okay, so yeah, okay, so we know that it's spalling off. So if you can imagine this process, you've got a lump of metal, and it might have some paint on it, it might not, but it might have a lot of rust on, and then inside the metal, the iron, because the iron is magnetic and the rust is not magnetic, so the process will occur in the iron, and between the crystal grain boundaries in the iron preferentially, it'll spall off. And so you'll end up with a bit of iron attached to a piece of rust, which gives you your red-grey chips. And there we go. That's that done. All right. So, okay. And then the interesting thing that we need to focus on next after we've solved this. So what I'm saying is we can completely dismiss the metal spheres. And you're going to see why in more detail, because we have far higher standard of evidence here in these particular effects, which are unique to cold fusion and to the Hutchison effect. Okay. Yoni6177, I built this analysis tool because no one would make it for me. And I built it by doing about 3 months of labor in the last several weeks, packing that in with like 18, 19-hour days, much to the chagrin of my family, because I wanted to hit a mark where I could allow anyone to delve into this data, and also anyone of any skill level to view this data in all of its beautiful and ferocious glory, that might be in a position to understand the significance of what it is showing. Okay, so yeah, in this instance here, I'm showing rust and less rust. So rust. If I go and show you the actual image, it's taken us to this place. So we've got some fragments, and this is interesting because it's like one large piece of red-grey chip, but when I was smearing it onto the microscope slide, it shows the back side, then it shows the front side, then it shows the back side, and then it shows the front side, and then it shows the back side. It's kind of like twisted, okay? And interestingly enough, it has this sphere on the end. Now, if we look at the color, we can see the sphere is quite black. That's quite good for normal iron. This is shiny. This is red. This is shiny or metallic more, and this is red, okay? So essentially, this is rusty. This is the grey. That's the red. And if we go in here and we look at this, we've got both grey and red. So this is a deposit on the surface. We go to the SEM. You can see that this is the growth. This is more iron, and this is less iron as it's starting to rust, and this is more rusty. So you're seeing a progression of the rustification of the metal. Okay. And the interesting thing is that rust is like, what, 3-4 times the size of the iron which it starts with. You can see a lovely little iron-rich crenellated sphere. This is one of the correct sort of types that we all know and love. Here, you see another one down here. Da-da-da-da. And there's many. Here's a not perfect one. And a very nice large structure at the end here. I mean, they're all over. They're all over the sample. Yeah, there's another couple tucked in here. Okay. So slag wool. Slag wool is very, very important to this story. And again, if we click on this, we can see here is our SEM image. And if we go to the color, we can see this is not a piece of metal. This is not a piece of wire. This is a piece of transparent material. And it is, in fact, slag wool. Okay, and we'll come on to that later. Thank you to Felix for producing this. I sent out the full image as one downloadable image previously, and so Felix in Switzerland did a particle size analysis using a script on here, and he found that this was consistent with dust samples from the event published in NIST data. So the spheres are consistent with the spheres found in other samples officially analyzed by NIST. Okay, so I'm thinking that this almost certainly and unequivocally is a sample from the event, and so we can consider it as such. So that is the points of interest. There's other points of interest I won't go into there. But in all of these different panels, you have the ability to turn on the markers, okay? And if we search for a particular thing, like I will show blob, it'll then only show you the markers. You can see there's two markers up here of blob. We got one here, and there's another one very close, okay? Okay, and when we roll over these, it'll actually pulsate them. It'll pulsate them. If I go full screen here and I get rid of this, and basically if I go over any of these, you can see that it's pulsating in the top left-hand corner. It's probably going to be easier when you look at it as yourself. But we have these for the analysis points. We can turn on the markers, and we also have these for the measurements. And so it starts to get quite populated. But if we go on here, we can move these through, and then it'll pulsate the measurements there. So you can see which one is the one that you're looking at. And on the measurements here, again, the same thing. The measurements have verification, classification categories here. So we can say that all of them, show all of them. We can show just the verified ones. We can show the ones that are, subject, suspect, and the ones that have been refused, and so on. This allows people to, without any skill, to identify potential features, okay, and then for other people to say yes, they're real or they're not real. And you can click on the markers themselves, and it'll take you to the type of measurement that it is, okay, automatically, whatever that measurement is. So on the analysis points, you can just see one there. We've got these detailed analysis from the SEM, so you can see the formation of what rust looks like and the area that it was analyzed, and you can see the elemental constitution, atomic and weight percent, and the spectrum. And again, using the closed brackets and open brackets, you can step through all of these different measurements fairly quickly. And this is all coming offline. I'm viewing this live online. This is exactly what you have the ability to look at. This for me here is incredible, and I will talk about this in my Tesla Tech presentation in the beginning of August. But what you are looking at here, in my view, is the signature of a monopole. You've got the triangle cone coming in, and you have the two sides of the monopole. Okay, I think I imaged this much better. You have another monopole signature down here, and this is building potentially a much larger sphere. The size of this thing, we'll quickly use a measurement tool here. This is absolutely gargantuan, the kind of ball lightning size this would be. Just this segment here, made of 4 substructures, is 64, 65 microns. So you can imagine that if a whole sphere was made from this, it would be absolutely immense. Okay. All right. So you can go and look at these in your leisure. So there's a whole bunch of different iron-rich crenellated spheres. There's more analysis point. This might be a piece of solidified slag wall that didn't become slag wall fiber. I need to look at slag wall to find out whether that's the case. Here, interestingly, it says it's yttrium. I can't believe it's yttrium, but certainly it's got a very large peak there. That's a very, very heavy element, and it's in blobs, so that's interesting. Zinc, obviously you get zinc dipped iron in construction buildings, but also zinc is like the element that's synthesized after copper. So is this synthesized zinc? Certainly in the NIST data from the event, there seemed to be a lot of zinc there. Again, that's the titanium red one. Here's one of a classic iron-rich crenellated sphere here. So in these images, they're actually higher resolution than you can see them in the map. So you can click on that thing there and it brings it up. Here's another iron-rich crenellated sphere. Again, there's two spots here, and we're looking at spot 2. What is spot 2? Well, again, it's high in zinc. So is that associated with that? I don't know. This is what it looks like in the SEM image. Okay, so there's two spots. We've got a spot over here, which is looking at the zinc end, and over here we got something that's looking at this. And what is this? Well, it looks like it's FeO2, roughly. Actually, it's higher concentration of iron. This leads me to suspect that this possibly is from the slag wall process, because you get carbon vapors and so on in the slag wall process, and that does further reduction of iron oxides. But this isn't the product from, how should we put this, a process that uses aluminium and iron oxide. Otherwise, it would be a very poor version of it, because that process nearly produces pure iron, blobs or fluids. It doesn't produce this terrible atomic concentration of 40% iron and nearly getting on to 60% oxygen. That would be very, very poor aluminium mixed with iron and iron oxide. That would be a very poor effort at using that technology. What's happening here is going full screen, because I'm actually I'm on full screen and it hides the interface here. But I'm going to come out of that. Okay. Okay. It's because I've zoomed in somehow. Have I zoomed in? Okay. I'm going to refresh like this. Okay. Okay. We'll go just do that. Okay. All right. Anything else I want to show in the analysis points? There's going to be more analysis points added to this. Yeah, this shows you the kind of proportion of elements in slag wall. You've got oxygen, magnesium, aluminium, silicon, and calcium. The interesting thing about this sample and the other sample that I looked at, I'm not seeing chunks of aluminium. I'm not seeing chunks of aluminium. Why is that interesting? That to me is interesting because in the Hutchison effect, like this one here, where you see this hexagon paisley-like structure consuming, and inside you've got these Sothic triangle-like shaped cuts, and the material is converted into carbon and oxygen and things like that. Aluminium is completely eaten away by this process, producing lighter and heavier elements. Perhaps that's why we do not see any aluminium in the sample. I don't know. It's just the case. All right. Not yet. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe it's because this was magnetically extracted and it's just dragged a load of fibers along. We're not seeing, or I just haven't looked at the right bits to find chunks of aluminium oxide or chunks of aluminum. I don't know, but that is just the reality. We are not seeing aluminium. We're just not seeing it. So make of that what you will, but we do know aluminium gets massively affected by cold fusion and the Hutchison effect. So it's certainly in line with our findings so far. And the actual different things we've got here before I go on to the analysis tools. What am I doing here? I don't know what I've done here now. I'm doing too much talking and not concentrating on what I'm doing. Okay. It's got gypsum. So there's lots of pieces of gypsum. Of course, gypsum is in drywall. So you've got CaSO4. So it's got calcium at roughly the same ratio as sulfur, and then nearly 4 times the ratio of oxygen, CaSO4. That's calcium sulfate, and of course you will have some hydrogen and oxygen in there if it's hydrated. So it's got lots of calcium sulfate in these sample all over. And in fact, what does the calcium sulfate look like? If I go back to it, it looks like, and you can see it on the sample, here it is. That is a chunk of calcium sulfate. You can come up with your own reason why it's in a vortical whirl. But if we look at the color imagery here, it's just this white little flecks on here. So here's another piece of calcium sulfate. Okay. And it looks like that. That is calcium sulfate, calcium sulfate, calcium sulfate. Okay. Oh, and there's a nice little ball here. Look at that one. Isn't he lovely? Yeah. Okay. All right. So that's the analysis points. Again, turn on the markers. You can see the various markers on the overall image. And now we are going to look at the measurement tools. Thank you very much. Above all things, love. That's very, very kind of you. Really appreciate that. It's really, really, really kind of you for that $10. Okay. So this is where I've done the most work, and this is where you can get involved with analyzing these samples in a way that's never been possible for the public to do before. Now, in the past, as I said, I've shared the tool that came with a microscope and the files. The files were big. The microscope software was terrible, and it only worked on a PC, and you had to install it. You don't have to install anything. You just go to starfire.tech, Patricia 2001, and you're right into this interface, and you can start doing some contributing to the analysis. Okay, so we're going to go into the measurements here. And so when we got the measurements on, let's say we want to measure a line structure. So let's find a nice fiber to look at, this one here. We're just going to measure the length of this. And so we put it on the screen and off we go. We can measure the length of it and do it like that. Okay. And it also has this luminosity profile. This luminosity profile is critical for assessing boundaries between crystal grain boundaries and whether something actually is a fiber. So if I go across this fiber, you can see this curve. It goes from the black down. So we actually get an idea on, we can move this around. It's a non-modal panel. We can see as we go along, and we can drag these samples around by grabbing hold of the green line. Okay. All right. So that's the line tool. It gives you these intensity profiles that you can compare. So we've got a higher intensity profile across this little fiber here. You tighten that in, and we can move it along the fiber there. Okay. So that allows you to understand not only that, but when you go into crystal grain boundaries and stuff, you can see more information. Okay, so that is the line tool. Hit delete to get rid of the measurement. Then what we'll do is we'll go and find a sphere somewhere. Let's go and find a sphere. Let's go and find one of our little spheres, one which we haven't looked at before. Let's have a look. I think we've looked at this one before, have we? Let's turn on the markers. There's no marker there. No marker there. No marker there. Okay, so we got a new sphere to look at here. I'm pretty sure we had one in the analysis markers. No, it's not this one. Okay, good. All right, so we've got a new sphere here, and we're going to measure this sphere. So we use the circle tool, and very simply, you've got two drag handles here, and you can easily fit the circle in there, and you can move the measurement off to one side. Now, you can move that whole measurement around, okay? And doing that between the color, you see the color is offset a little bit here. You can actually make calibrations for the matching the color and so on. I don't know what I just did there. I stepped through rather than plussing minuses. Oh dear. Idiot. Let's go and find our sphere again. You see, it's not that easy. Let's go and find a different sphere because I can't find that one very quickly. Where is he? Where's he gone? We've got another sphere. We've got another sphere here. Let's take this sphere. Okay, lovely sphere. All right. Excuse me. I tried to hit plus and minus, but I hit open bracket, which takes you to the next measurement. Okay, so we got a sphere here. And we got our measurements. And now what this measurement shows is the diameter of the sphere between the two blue spots. It shows the perimeter, which is the distance all the way around. It shows the area inside the circle. And it also shows the volume if this was a sphere. So you can actually work out the volume, and it shows you all those statistics. Now, all of those statistics for all of the measurements is under the Statistics tab over here, which you'll be able to see when you actually look at it on your own computer here. Okay, and this shows you the statistics of the various different structures here. So circles, cylinders, lines, rectangles and polygons here. It shows you all the statistics. And when you do print reports, it puts these all down in a readable way that it can print out. Okay. And it shows you the standard deviations and mean and max and minimum of those and the number of counts of measurements that you've got. Okay, but we haven't made a measurement now. To make a measurement, we can give it with a name or no name. I'm going to give it with a name, so I'm going to leave that name on yes. We're going to hit record, and we're going to call this a medium sphere because I'm not feeling very inventive right now. Call this medium sphere, and we can give it a description. Bob tried to find a sphere. He did find a sphere, and then he pressed the wrong keyboard shortcuts and ended up by putting in a zooming to a different measurement from a previous time. And so he had to choose a different sphere, and this is what he ended up with. All right. If you want to know what I'm using there, I'm using Whisper Flow, so it's just typed what I've said there. And this is a little bit small for you, but anyway, it looks beautiful on my end. You can't see the option to do the thumbs up. Oh, that's a shame. Okay, so I can save that now. And so we've now got a new measurement down here. So we can go to one of the previous measurements and this measurement, and we can see it pops back. And we can see now our description up here has popped up in this window here. Now, if we wanted to edit the position of that, we can literally go and click on the edit button down here, and we can move this into a new position. And we can change this, and let's say we want to edit this so that we're going to give it the classification sphere in the tags. We save that. Now we can choose sphere in our tags, and it shows you our sphere here in the list. It's just narrowed it down to that one sphere tag. Let's say we want to edit it again because we've unfortunately got it in the wrong place. So I'm going to use my thing here to sort this out, and now it's back in the correct place because I didn't save that. Okay, fine, that's done. And okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this, and I'm going to put a YouTube link in here, and let's go and find a random YouTube link. Let's find a random YouTube link, completely at random. Let's just put in this one here from the DESI testing the other day. So we're going to put this one in here. Like that. And we need to put a space after it and we hit save. And now it shows the YouTube link here as an actual video. And we can press play. And it'll play in the viewer window. Now, you can see that the data only has a little bit of text and the YouTube link. If we wanted to put a link to a particular website in here, let's choose a nice website. Let's choose, I don't know, I don't know, Lena Academy. What a great site that is. So we're going to put Lena Academy in here. And we put that in there. And we go save. And now you can see that it's given that as a link. So we can click on that and it'll open it in a new window. And we can see Lena Academy here to do our nuclear reactions. Thank you to Brian for this version of the Nanosoft suite. So we can do our nuclear reactions in here. And that's now as a link in there. So with almost no skills, anyone can start contributing to the analysis. And then what you can do is you can go and hit CSV out down here and save to a directory your measurements. And then if people are sending you measurements that are new measurements, you can do CSV in and it will append it to the list if it's unique. Or they can do CSV replace and it will remove all of the current measurements in the measurements tab and it will give you the measurements that you're loading in. Okay. So I will just reset this and I'll actually, it's gone into a little bit of small mode here. I want to try and make this a little bit bigger for you. So let's give me a second. New window. It's just going to run like that. It likes my 4K screen, that's why. It's just annoying for you because it's 4K here, but not for you. Maybe I can change it. Maybe if I actually force this to a different resolution, you'll actually see it easier. Give me a second. Display. Display settings. Okay. Maybe this will be better for you. Let's see. I'm not sure that's any better. Oh well. I did try. I did try. Didn't fail. Didn't succeed. But anyway, you can look at this in your own time. Okay, so that's kind of the sphere and basic editing. Let's have a look at our rectangle tool. So let's find something that's a little bit rectangle. I know you're going to say, it's there, Bob. Why did you go past it? This is more like a rectangle. Okay, it's close. So we've got a rectangle here. So we can scale our rectangle. Again, we have the measurements of the sides on the sides here. And we can rotate it. And we can drag it by dragging in the center of the box. So we can scale this down and rotate it and drag it roughly. Okay. Now the line profile, I'm going to try and do a multi-line profile tool using this here. Anyway, that's that tool. We have polygon, which we can use for more interesting shapes. So let's find something that's more interesting. Is that more interesting? Maybe. And we can do something a little bit more interesting. It's calculating the area of the polygon real time and all of the lengths of the sides and all of the external angles. Okay. We go I'm not sure that's doing it for us. I'm going to add a few more sides to it. And we're just going to look at the top surface here. We do the top surface. Okay, I'm going to go like that. Is this more accurate representation of the top surface? Maybe. Okay, let's see how that looks in the color. Not bad in the color. We can drag it off to one side. Nice bit of red rust on a piece of gray background there. Okay, let's get that in position. And I'm going to measure. That's the measurement. Now you can see here that the measurement 59,267 micrometers squared. If I click on the micrometer button here, it'll convert it into millimeters squared. It's 0.059 millimeters squared. Honestly, it is. And the little L button that's over here on the right, this allows us to remove the external angles and the length of the sides for all of the different tools, whether it's rectangle or this one. So I'm going to record this one. We're going to call this Long Island. You can't, it's not really Manhattan. It's not really Long Island. But anyway, we're going to call it Long Island. It's a Long Island. What can I say? There we go. And there's our new measurement here. And you can see in the left-hand side here, it shows you what type of measurement it is. And I'm actually going to edit that, and I'm going to say, that this this is a dark red oxide on a grey chip with a decoration of calcium sulfate fragments on its surface. Okay, so there we go. We've changed the comment there. And now I'm going to approve that by giving it a tick. So we're going to give it a tick, and now you can see that it's now in the approved section. It's now not unapproved. And it's disappeared. There it is. I somehow managed to click the wrong one. There we go. It's in the approved section here. So now when I select just for approved, it's just got that. Now, in terms of viewing what you've got on the screen, if I delete that, go full frame and go to the SEM, there's this view panel over here on the right. And if I've got all of them selected, I've got none of them selected. Okay. You can see all the points on here. The green ones are ones that have been approved. The grey ones are not approved. But if I show the view area here, it shows that there's 27 measurements overall in the field of view. If I zoom in, it'll then show me in this field of view, there's only 11 measurements. If I go in, zoom in further, it's going to show me that there's only 4 measurements in this view. 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. Now, if I go to which ones are approved, of course, they would all be approved in that view. So I'm going to go to a different area. Okay, so we got 16 measurements, but if I click on approved, of those, only 11 are approved in this area. Okay, so you can get the idea that these classification tabs combined with what's in the view give you a very powerful view of what is going on in the viewer. There's a lot of views in that sentence. It's because I'm getting tired, which is not good. We've got a lot to go through. Anyway, okay, so I'm going to turn the markers off for now. Okay, so where did we get to? We got to the polygon. Now we're going to do the angle. We like the angle tool. So we're going to look at the angle between, what are we going to do? We're going to look at the angle between, let's say, let's two sticks. Here we go. We've got 2 sticks. We're going to look at the angle between these 2 sticks. And we are going to look at the length of the sides as well, because that's what this powerful tool can do. So, and there's no, if we turn on the measurement things, we can see there's no measurements in this field of view. So this is our first measurement on this part of the sample. That's what that button's really powerful to do. We see no other measurements here, even when we got the markers on or off. Yeah, we can see that there's no measurements in this area. So I'm going to do the angle tool here, and I'm going to drag that down to the center point there, intersection point there, that up to the end, and this over to the end as well. And you can make sure by zooming in that you're right on the end. And we can go and have a look to make sure we're right on the end here. And then we can see that that is 58.4 degrees. No coincidence there. That is a bit of a coincidence, but anyway. Okay, and it also can give you the length of each of the side arms, 271.9 micrometers and 269.9 micrometers. And we can turn those off like we can for the other tools. Okay, so there we go. That's our measurement for the angle between those. I'm just going to hit delete to get rid of that. And we're now going to look at this cylinder tool here. And I've not seen this tool. In fact, many of these tools, the way I've implemented, don't exist in other softwares. But this tool allows me to measure a bendy cylinder, work out what its length is, and also what its volume is as a cylinder of material. And if I'm not happy with the number of bendy points that I've got on there, which is not far off what I need for this particular one, it's not far off. It's actually pretty good. But let's say I want more. I can add more. I can add more control points on this to get a more accurate representation of the structure of this bendy piece of material. So we're going to go like that, maybe, I don't know, maybe. And like I say, there's only certain levels of perfection you really need. You can push things to the nth degree. And this is a Bezier spline interpretation. I wanted to move that back where it was. So, okay, it's catching. I need to change that when it's closer. Right, so we're going to go right to the end here. We're going to go right up here. We're going to check that's on the end of that, roughly along the length. Got a little kink in there, and then we'll narrow this down so that it's actually better on the width. Okay, so you could play around with this so that it's very accurate. But what it's giving you over here now is that the diameter of this slag wool fiber is 6.8 microns. Its length is 304.4 microns. And the volume of that slag wool fiber is 10,951 micrometers cubed. There we go. I'm sure you're all very happy about that. Okay. So we can record that one, and we're just going to give it cylinder, not name it. And then it's now appearing in our view. It's now appearing in our view. We have one measurement in our view. If we go back and measure, do our angle again, and we record that one, okay, we're going to record that one, our angle of 58.4 degrees. There we go. And we're going to record that one. No notes. You can now see we have two measurements in this view. If I start to zoom out and then pause, we've got more measurements in this view. What else have we got? Curved slag wool fiber. So here, this is a curved slag wool fiber that I've got here. You can see it here in the color image as well. Now, why have I got this notation here? Well, firstly, there is this paper and this recording of a presentation by the late Mahadevan Srinivasan. I'm going to move this over so you can see, okay, in this non-modal panel. And what they found was in a three-phase carbon arc furnace in a 11-week run non-stop during 1995, they have these massive carbon electrodes that get put into the scrap iron, the silicon dioxide, and they hit it with a lot of electricity, megawatts of electricity, and they found that over a 11-week period, they got an excess 4 tons of metal, and that was 3 tons of excess silicon and 1 ton of excess iron. The silicon comes from the fusion of two atoms, carbon and oxygen. So carbon's 12, oxygen is 16. Fuse those two together and you get silicon 28. But there's isotopes of carbon, there's isotopes of oxygen, and so you can end up with silicon 29 and silicon 30. And then the silicon isotopes then fuse to make iron.
Okay, and that's why you get that progression. It was done in this, and it's basically the same as the carbon arc experiment underwater, where you have oxygen, you need the oxygen, that leads to the formation of silicon and then onto iron. And also, this is what we do in the supernova reactor. Now, what does a carbon arc furnace look like? I hope I don't get a strike for this. I will just step through this. So this is the carbon arc furnace dropping into the thing. I'm going to step it on. I'm going to show you the bit of it actually dropping in. So it's quite funky. You can go and have a look at this in your own time. So it's dropping it into the melt pan. I wouldn't want to be breathing that nonsense in there. I wouldn't want to be driving this truck later either. And then the thing comes out of the way and they prepare. These are the three-phase electrodes. Now in Coimbatore, they were about 1 meter across each of the electrodes, because it was a much bigger furnace. This is still quite a large furnace, right? These are probably, I don't know, 50 centimeters across, these carbon electrodes. Now watch what happens when they put this in. I'm going to put this in to the furnace. I'm going to step forward. Don't want any copyright strikes. Stepping in. Now watch what happens to these cables as well on the left here. Look at that. That's utterly crazy. And the cables are going mental over here because of the intense number of, the megawatts of power that's being forced through them. Okay. Well, we have replicated the electronuclear collapse, where you have other elements spewing out of lead balls, for instance, here in Takaaki Matsumoto's work. You have the Georgia Ushua steel in the 1980s, replicated in the 1990s by Sundaresan and Bokras, synthesizing steel. Given that that's the case, the idea that you will get spherical metal, and by the way, what I'm showing you here is how slag wool is made. That is how slag wool is made. They take the slag off the top of the furnace, which is basically not got any iron in there, but there can be some contamination of iron. And we know from what I showed you here by Mahadev and Srinivasan, the guy that was the number one author on the initial cold fusion experimental research at Babar Atomic Research Center, the guy that invited me to India in 2017, whereupon I met Suhas Ralkar, and where I first spoke about the fact that I believed cold fusion, ball lightning, the Hutchison effect, and Ken Shoulders could explain the event. That's the very first time I did it in Red Pill videos. He had shared this earlier in ICCF 20 in Sendai, Japan, the previous year. And what this is showing is you can produce vast amounts of iron from silicon. And we know there's silicon in the slag. So iron could be produced, and it would be producing the exact same structures, the iron-rich crenellated spheres, because it is produced by the topological monopoles. It is produced by the electronuclear collapse. Now, this begs the question. This begs the question that potentially the slag wool, because the topological monopoles can bind into metals indefinitely, the monopoles could already have been in the thermal insulation. That said, we're actually seeing that they appear to have formed inside the metals in the building, potentially. Inside the metals. And by the way, there is one type of metal in the buildings that had a small concentration, about 0.4%, for anti-corrosive properties in the buildings. And that was the floor trusses. The floor trusses. And I've done the maths, and the amount of copper that you do see in those blobs is proportional to the amount of iron if the iron was the floor trusses. It is potentially possible that the copper in those instances was not synthesized and that it enabled the process to occur in all of the floor trusses for the whole building. Okay, so this is not synthesizing necessarily, but in the case of Matsumoto in his palladium, it was synthesizing. It wasn't in the palladium to begin with. Okay, so we know it can synthesize the copper. Okay, and that was from a heavier element. The suggestion is from George Hathaway that potentially it was synthesizing copper. I have seen in the other sample that I have in that bag that in the aluminium sample that was never tested by Hathaway, but I've shared the data, there are scalloped sections. And in the center of the scalloped section, there are globules rich in iron. So the aluminium has gone to the iron in that sample from Hutchison effect. And then in the center of a much larger scallop, so you can imagine there's fractal little scallops on the outside that have got iron in from the aluminium. In the center of that overall domed structure, there is a blob spherical rich in copper. The suggestion is in that sample, you've got the whole story going from aluminium through to iron through to copper. What we're seeing is a shortcut from iron to copper, which makes iron the full fuel of the future. And I'll go into that in a lot more detail in future presentation. So basically, I'm willing to completely dismiss the iron-rich crenellated spheres because we know that silicon can be transmuted to iron from various pieces of research in the field, and this is immense. Now, it's a least action process, so potentially in the process of making this, some of the energy was used to synthesize lighter isotopes, for instance, hydrogen isotopes, helium. Okay? That could have been going on as well. And so you don't see the massive energy that you would expect that would have blown a hole the size of the moon in India had this nuclear energy been released from the synthesis of all these tons of metals from carbon and oxygen. Okay, so we know that this goes on. We know that the technology used to produce slag wool here is producing this process, the same process. And since this sample is replete with slag wool, I mean, it's literally everywhere. Now, I think slag wool survives because it is a dielectric. It's glass. So look at all these slag wool particles. They're everywhere. Okay? It survives for the same reason Tuchanov used it to maintain the stability of his macro ball lightning quantum coherent object in the Tuchanov reactors. The same reason that dielectrics were used as guides for micro ball lightning aka exotic vacuum objects in Ken Shoulder's work. Because as it's condensing, it will produce electrons. The electrons will then charge the dielectric. That then cause repulsion with the electrons that are still on the non-fully cooled exotic vacuum object aka ball lightning. Okay? And so as the ball lightnings are released from their localized nodal-based winding up in the metal, when they come towards a piece of slag wool, they will charge the slag wool and cause the material around the slag wool to come apart, but the slag wool itself will survive. So where I don't see aluminium, that makes sense if the process was used in the event. Where I see slag wool, that makes sense if the process was used in the event. Okay? And look, you can see many examples of iron-rich crenellated spheres all over this sample. Here's another one. Okay? I mean, they're just everywhere. I mean, the more you look at it, and by the way, it's just everywhere. Now, I'm going to go to, I'm going to turn off that view, and I'm going to go to two structures which again, I'm willing to dismiss it, but I'm gonna show you this one. It's like a monopole here, and I've annotated it, but here it is. This, my friends, is near to a collection of spheres, which are near to a collection of spheres, which are near to a collection of spheres. Okay, there's a lot of spheres down this end, right? Anyway, this one is of more interest to me, and I've taken some better images of some of these spheres as well. But this is in the metrics that you can see. Okay, so I'm going to just remove this measurement here. You can see our sphere, our topological pole, monopole, and the material spewing out of it. So what am I referring to? We'll draw a polygon around it. For those people that can't see, we'll draw a polygon around our spewing out material. Here, this is our spewing out material. Okay, there we go. There we go. Can you see it? It's there, coming out of the hole here. There's the hole, there's the spewing out material. Okay. And what does this look like? Well, again, we have to refer to steps to the discovery of electronuclear collapse, but not only. So steps in the nuclear collapse, electronuclear collapse. You can actually rotate things, you know. You can actually press R and rotate stuff. There we go. So we've got our rotated monopole from the event. Okay, spewing out stuff from its pole. Here we have it in Matsumoto's work. Okay, here we have it in the nickel hydrogen system of one Focardi and Piantelli. This is from an electrode that I held in my hand in 2017. This is analysis of it long before I got to touch it, which was in 2006. This is from their most heat-producing reactor from, I think, 1996. You can see these classic ball lightning-like tracks. And over here, you can see it up close. You can see the carbon plume coming out the back of a sphere. You can see another one here with a sphere here. These are classic-looking structures from Matsumoto's work in the nickel hydrogen most heat-producing reactor of Focardi and Piantelli. Here, this is in Nesterovich. This is a later paper to the paper that, maybe it's a previous paper, but it's from the same work, where they produced long-lived luminous plasmoids. These are toroidal glowing structures that glowed on metal for 2 days after the water flow plasma discharge. And they say it's because they are producing a magnetic charge. And here they say substantial evidence in support of this hypothesis may be provided by spherical objects with a hole on the axis found in significant numbers in the post-discharge period on surfaces covered with trenches. They are considered to be the cooled plasmoids with an axis of symmetry coinciding with the axis of rotation. So these structures rotate. We know from Matsumoto's study of Matsumoto's work that the material rotates around the outside, and from our own work, we've shown that in the Vega experiment, we've seen the material is spun around the outside of the structure. So this is completely in line. I don't agree particularly with their format of the monopole, but I totally agree with their conclusion that it is the monopole. And so this here is a signature of a monopole. The damage to the metal is the signature of monopoles forming inside the crystal grain boundaries and inside the metal. I think matching John Hutchison's observations, which I have verified from the early 1980s samples of steel fragmented into fragments that I have in that bag down there that have these monopole-like structures all the way through it, and it caused the fragmentation of the steel. And this is exactly the same structures as we're seeing here with the topological monopole. And it's just a hole on one side. And I have some much higher resolution images from here. Here is in our Vega experiments. You can see the iron-rich crenellated sphere with the carbon and oxygen spewing out. And here it is with another one, comes from the structure. Anyway, all of this is publicly available right now at starfire.tech/Patricia-2001. I'm going to rotate that twice again to get back to the normal orientation. I actually was finishing one of the measurement tools, and I thought, right, now I'm going to look to see what different spheres I can find, to see if I can find any signatures of, that are more clear of the monopole rather than the iron-rich crenellated sphere. And I came here and I go, well, there you go. It took me 15 seconds when I tried to find something, and I found it basically immediately. And you know, I've become a bit jaded to the strength and the preciseness and the credibility of this data. And I'm literally just looking at a small fraction of what was available to look at. And, you know, there it is. There it is. And I'm willing to forego all of these spheres of metal, even the spheres that show the classic topological monopole emission of lower mass synthesized elements. I'm willing to forgo all of this because of our points of interest, because these are so incredibly significant pieces of data. They show the magnetic fluid being produced in between the crystal grain boundaries. They show the matter destroyed in the same way as the Hutchison effect and the same way as in our experiments like the Vega experiments, from the production of fluidized electrons forming into ball lightning. The synthesis of elements from these structures and matching exactly the observations of cold fusion by Takaaki Matsumoto and of John Hutchison. And the fact that the more iron that is consumed, the more copper becomes present, and the synthesis of both heavier and lighter elements completely fits the understanding. Okay. The fact that it is able to fragment the crystals themselves rather than just between the crystal grain boundaries, and the polygonal nature of the regularly organized material. In my view, that these crystals are prima facie evidence of cold fusion and the Hutchison effect, as shown prior to the event in recorded and published and peer-reviewed journals, the same process going on. And if we go over here, we go and find another little crystal over here. If I go to markers on, turn that off, and it's going to find one crystal. Where is it? Where are you? Where are you? I mean, they're all over here. So I'm going to go crystal here. Okay, so this is another crystal. And again, you have consumption of the metal along the crystal grain boundary. You have blobs in there, and it obviously has been fragmented apart. I did the measurement on these type of crystals. I got another one. Let's have a look at another one. This is a freshly cleaved crystal. This again is something similar to what let's try and click that again. And you can see here in the color, it is shiny. I've got the shiny face. Again, I broke this crystal with my finger pressure. It has these holes in it, so the damage was already done. These holes are about typically 5 to 7 microns apart. They might give some indication as to the frequency that was used. But I'm saying here, this crystal, which looks very similar to others which have been compromised, was apparently cleaved with finger pressure when applying the particles to the microscope stubs. It is around 20 by 20 by 40 microns. If this was completely composed of iron, it would weigh approximately 126 nanograms and would quite literally float away in a light breeze. Quite literally float away in a light breeze. If you click on here, I've given you the calculation of that in Grok, and it says here the dimensions. It gives it here, it's 126 nanograms, and this assumes pure solid iron with no voids or oxidation. Now it says down here, I asked the question, would it float away in a breeze? And I said, would it float away in a breeze? He says, yes, it could easily be carried along or float in even a light breeze, though it wouldn't truly levitate like a helium balloon. Its tiny size, tens of micrometers, puts it in the range of fine dust or inhalable particles, PM10 or coarser, where air currents, turbulence, and even weak updrafts dominate over its settling tendency. So if you can imagine you had a big, just normal conventional fire, and then you had a load of particles that were being fragmented almost instantaneously by these clusters that have been unleashed to travel through the material and the gases that they produce to start fragmenting it, then those particles, with the updraft of the thermal heat rising up, doesn't need to be hot. You know, a hot air balloon shoots up. If you've ever been in a glider, it's like going into an express elevator. In fact, the most fast I've ever felt was in a glider in Sussex, getting in one of those thermals below a little white puffy cloud. I felt more acceleration upwards than I felt in one of the fastest lifts in the world in the Taipei 101. So just a thermal updraft. This is the sort you see an eagle soaring on and gaining height before gliding. Just something like that would be vastly more than would be necessary to lift a flux of particles in the air like that. So in still air, a 20 micrometer particle takes 3 to 4 minutes to settle from a height of 1.5 meters. 3 to 4 minutes to settle from 1.5 meters. This 20 to 40 micron ion fragment is comparable, so it falls noticeably, but not instantly. A breeze, e.g. 1.5 meters per second or 2 to 11 meters per hour, like a gentle wind or indoor air movement, is much faster than its settling speed. Turbulence and horizontal vertical airflows easily keep it suspended or transport it long distances before it settles. Real-world dust, metal grindings, and aerosols of this size routinely stay airborne in ventilated spaces or outdoors. Okay? So what I'm suggesting to you right now is this isn't even the smallest particle of metal that we've got in here. There's much smaller particles. I'm just choosing a particular particle. Okay? This particular particle will just float away in the lightest of breeze. And this explains, similarly, what happened in the cold fusion experiment in 1986 of Pons and Fleischmann, where they had this 1 cc of palladium loading for a couple of weeks. They turned down the electrostatic pressure, turned down the voltage, and it ended up by converting the water into, the water disappeared, the apparatus disappeared, it went through the overall container, went through the lab bench and went into the floor, and some people say about a fist of concrete and the aggregates. By the way, aggregates are mostly aluminosilicates, and we know that Ken Shoulder's EVOs can bore through aluminium oxide and silicon dioxide. So aluminosilicates are literally fuel for this process. They are literally fuel. We've already shown that the iron is a fuel. Literally fuel for this process. Some reports I was told is that the entire room was filled with this fine dust that would not settle. It was filled with a fine dust that would not settle. And Pons and Fleischmann thought this is way, way beyond nuclear. We're lucky we didn't blow up the whole university. I think we need to change our experiment. And that's when they went for a very thin wire. And that's the one that they reported on in 1989. Okay. So this particle here would float away in a light breeze. And I'll show you the measurements here. If we go and look at the line here, we can go and have a line measurement here between there and this hole and that hole. That's 6.9 microns. Between this hole and this hole, it's 6.2 microns. Between this hole and this hole, it's 7 microns. This one's 6.7 microns. You get the idea. There's these regularly spaced holes that seem to have been causing problems for this metal. Okay. All right. I think that's most of the... oh, by the way, if you delete something by accident, you can hit the undo. There's multiple levels of undo here. Okay. So I'm going to take that out. On the search term here, we can see all of our little things. Well, I'm just going to run through this quickly just to see if there's anything else I want to share. Oh, this might be either organic fiber or it might be asbestos. Why do I say asbestos? Because there was only one type of asbestos in the buildings. It's called chrysotile, and it looks like this. Okay, and the thing about asbestos is it has fibers that are in the nanometric, but they are in bundles, and it does look like this is a bundle of fibers. Okay, and the overall width of this is 10.5 microns, but of course the fibers themselves are much smaller. So this might be a piece of asbestos, but actually we've got possibly more significant asbestos here, potentially, because this is a piece of slag wall. Okay, so you can see if I do another line tool here, you can see that this is slag wall kind of dimensions. So this is about 5.1 microns across. That's the kind of slag wall size. But in here, there's a kind of matrix that's stuck to this slag wall. Now, on the north tower between floor 1 and 37, 38, they had a small percentage of the fire proofing and thermal insulation contained a proportion of this chrysotile, only chrysotile, what do you call it, asbestos. And that was part of the mix. In 1971, the rules came in, you can't use it anymore, so all of the rest of the buildings just went to slag wall in the most part of the mix. But you can see this is your slag wall, but in this matrix that's bound onto the slag wall, you can see these much, much finer particles here, fibers. And if you zoom into this, these are definitely in the sort of bounds of the kind of fibers that you would expect to be, what do we call it, asbestos. These very small fibers. So if I go and do a cylinder here, and I'll wind that back down to 2 because we don't need many points, and we'll go down here and we'll add this in, blah, 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 here. We've got it far too wide at the moment. Got this little fiber here, and we're going to bring it down here so that it's just there. So that's roughly our thing. So this is this is 200 nanometers. It's still quite big. It's still quite big, but it's 6.7 microns. But there are much smaller ones here. And what I'd like to do is go back to the sample and image this at a much higher resolution as an indicative sample. There are other pieces that look like this in the sample. But if I record that, okay, and save, and then I go to the statistics here, it's on the boundary. This is the lines for the WHO specification for. Have I got it here? Maybe it's that one. That one. Okay, that one is fine. No. Anyway, you can click on these fibers, and this is where you can come in. This is my call to action to you to go through parts of the sample and generate measurements using the various tools, so we can get a good statistics of the fibers that are in there. It might be below. I mean, this fiber still is getting on towards being dangerous. That is to say, it will loft and it will get in the lungs and it will get stuck in the lungs. The lungs won't be able to clear it. So there's a bunch of particles here that are dangerous by their diameter. I can't see the one that we had. Maybe I didn't save it properly. Anyway. Okay. I thought, where did I put that? Was it up here? Oh, it might be because I didn't approve it. You know, it's that one. No, it's that one. Did I click that wrong? I don't know whether I clicked it wrong. Let me try and do that again. Let me try and do that again. We'll do it on this fiber here. Cylinder. Go on. You see why I need a bigger SEM. Okay, that's roughly the length of that fiber. I can't. Oh God, I've gone back again. I've done it again. Plus and minus, not forward and back. Okay, one last time. Right. Cylinder. Is anyone bored yet? This is why you need a lot of people doing this. Hopefully some of you out there will be interested enough to assist. Okay, so okay. Okay, I found a bug. The bug is I made it too wide. I've got a sticky mouse. I dropped my laptop and it's a sticky mouse on this thing. Okay. Okay. And statistics. I'm going to approve this asbestos particle, and then it'll appear because I've. Okay, where's the statistics? Okay, yeah. So that's that particle now. So now that is on the threshold wherever it's gone. Can't find it. Anyway, I'm not doing a very good demonstration here. Okay. Oh, that's a calibration mark, and that shouldn't show, by the way. That's a calibration. So where is that one? It's there. So why can't I see it? Anyway, like I say, needs more work. Okay, so let's get rid of that. Let's go full screen. Let's get rid of the markers. Okay, now I've shown you the basic functionality here of the measurement tools. I've also shown you or hinted at these categorizations, approval kind of things here. I'm just going to show you the reporting. So you can click on reports here. I'm just going to make sure I'm not pre-selecting anything. Okay. And we'll turn off those. No, those. Okay. If I click on reports, we've got either a choice of overview report, and that gives you a viewport image plus 31 measurements in the summary table. So you click it there, it's already produced the report and it's done the printing there. So we've got a picture of the overall thing. Sorry, I'm not showing you, am I? Sorry. No, slag wool, Athena Max, slag wool. It's insulation. Let me show you what slag wool is. You can go and look at it, but here we go. You've probably seen it before. Here is the kind of particles you can get in slag wool. So this is for microscopy. So they're little shiny things here. Now these could be silicates, or they could have some metal content. But yeah, you'll kind of see. Yeah, you're going to see the screen. You're a bit behind. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, this is slag wool. It's wool and made of slag. Okay, so this is the basic report here. The overall report. You can see it here in HTML form, and it shows you the classifications. You can see these are confirmed, unconfirmed. You can see the strip charts here with things that are potentially around the boundary of. So these structures here, these cylinder diameters, these are below the diameter that classifies it as. How should we put this? It classifies it as asbestos or dangerous particles, according to the WHO. Okay. And then the second report here is individual measurements. And what this is going to do is going to go through all of the measurements you've made and do a screen grab. This is all coming live off the internet here. So this is not local. Even the new measurements we made there, you can see them all popping in, the angle. There we go. Now it's going to do all of the color measurements because I selected that. Okay. And it complained because of the number of pop-ups. So sometimes if you haven't got your pop-up to ignore, your browser to ignore it, so I'm going to have to run that again, unfortunately. Oh dear. Should be faster because some of it will be cached. If you've got a faster internet connection, you'll get this faster. If it's local, it's nearly instantaneous. It really does it very quickly. Of course, you can select particular things to show. Now it's going through the color, macro photography. Right, there we go. So it's produced our report with all of our individual measurements in black in the SEM and the color. This is actually a black and white print, so it's only showing the. I can't do color on here because it's not a color printer. Maybe here. I've got a PDF preview here. Is it going to give me a PDF preview in color, or is it going to be in black and white? Is it still in color or black and white? Oh, it is in color. I'm going to... What's going on? It's not going to let me go on that screen, is it? What? Oh no. Oh, Dad, I've lost it now. Okay. Yeah. You can't see the color preview. Oh, come on. It's taken over my screen. I can't get onto my other screen. Oh dear. That's not to do with my software. That's the printing. Maybe if I can switch to it. No, it's not going to let me do it. I've been locked out of one of my screens. Oh, that's fun. I don't even know how to fix this. Meanwhile, if I could show you, come on. I can at least scroll here. Maybe I can. So you can see for each of these measurements, it's got the SEM and black and white, and then it has any of your notes there, the SEM and the color rather. And then you can see the elements in that one. You can turn the measurements off if you don't want to see the measurements, like the actual overlays on the measurements. So you can see the comparison between the SEM and the color there. And all of the notes in here. So again, this prints into a PDF. When it's printing, it also shows the link. Obviously, you can click on the link if it's a PDF, but if it's not a PDF, then you can't click on it. So if it's a printed document, it's useful to have the actual links there so they're written down. So yeah, this is the kind of report you can produce very, very quickly from the data. And now I need to find out, I'm going to go back to my mugshot and I'm going to see how I can recover access to the other screen. I think what I'm going to do is this. No, it's still not giving me access to that screen. I have a screen that I can't get to. I've never had this before on the Mac. That's weird. Right, okay. No, now it's letting me. Now what happened there? How did I get there? I kind of crept through the corner there. That's weird. Okay, all right. I think it's reorganize my pages. I haven't even got to the power features. Arrange. Yeah, it decided to rearrange my screen for some reason. No, I did that. Okay. Back in the room, nearly there. Are you looking for a link to the viewer? It's let me just check it here. Starfire.tech/Patricia-2001. Okay, I will look here. There we go. That is a link, so you can look at this at your heart's content. You can even look at your own DZIs, and in future I will make a tool to make it easy to make your own DZIs and calibrate them. Okay, so you can go and have a look at it there, and I will get it back on the screen now. I've actually got my screen showing in the right place. Okay. Okay, so now we have one more reporting type, which is distribution charts. So this is the distribution of data. You can see it basically produces it instantaneously. This is a very high-powered feature that people want when they're analyzing data sets. But essentially, it's producing the distribution charts of the different types of data. And in fact, you can actually bring up those charts here, and they're non-modal. You can actually pop them out into their own little screens, and you can then scale them and move them around the screen as a separate chart. So here I can choose the circles. These are all my circles, and over here I can choose my cylinders, and I can choose the diameter of my cylinders or the aspect ratio of the cylinders. This is what's really important. And I've got the WHO critical things. So we've actually got a number of things that are below the diameter. There's two samples on that I've already done that are below the diameter of super dangerous particles. So yeah, that's that. Very, very powerful on the distribution charts. And then we also now have histogram. And in this case, I'm actually going to go to a different system. I will look at it here, actually. I'll look at it here. So under the histogram tool, you can, and this is more powerful than you get on top-end systems, which you actually pay an annual license for. You can actually look at things that fit within an upper and lower band of luminosity. Okay? And you can see things that are inside or outside of that band. So by clicking on here, they are outside the band and they're in red, or they're inside the band and they're in green. And it gives you the, from the current viewport, it gives you the area which is inside and the area that's outside. Okay. And so you can adjust this to match what you're seeing. And so I'm going to use this development path to auto-identify particles of different types. And to that end, I built another system which you'll see, which enables us to look at some aspects of the particle types, which you're going to see in a second. But I'm going to go to a different data set, which is going to be our Matsumoto S71 replication. And if you want to see about this, I've only got one note at the moment, but you can see the original Matsumoto experiment here. I give some talk about it. You can see the actual experiment here. This is the one that produced some of the beautiful images in his book. When I think it's already happened. No, it's not. Has it happened? Yeah, it's already happened down here. It's very quick. It's all over in a second. There we go. That's it. That's the experiment. And we replicated this in Prague last year, Paul Harris and I, at Jan Rack's lab for the Alchemy of Prague. We had a very bright light, and high-speed photography was taken by Andre Romea, who you can see here, using a Kronos camera, and we filmed that, and I shared that. So you can see the explosion here. This is the AC pulses during the 800 millisecond shot. Thank you very much, Jon. It's very, very much appreciated. Really appreciate it. So yeah, this is how simple this experiment is. Can be done in classrooms, and this is the center where that explosion occurred. And this tool here allows us to see. So what happens is when this explosion occurs, you get electronuclear collapse, and you get these plasmoid structures that produce these spheres of lead. And the spheres of lead, you can see, blow up. Sometimes they're fairly intact like these ones, but other times they fail and they spill their guts to various degrees. This one's just starting to spill its guts. This one smeared its guts. This one smeared its guts. But a lot of the time, they kind of completely blow up. This one, you can see the fragments all around, and you can see where it impacted. And it's got this kind of like backward and forward brushing. You see it blowing up here. You can see kind of some sort of helical thing going on here, but they tend to blow either side. Now, this one looks like it first hit here, started to fail, and then died over here. This one blew up quite spectacularly. But often you get two smears, one sometimes lopsided, from these explosions. Like I say, you can replicate this extremely simply. And this experiment is so nice because it has copper is mid-gray, the lead in the wire comes out as very bright, and the carbon that's synthesized comes out as black. So what this tool allows us to do, the histogram, is I can choose all of the black splodges here, right? Okay. All of the black splodges, like auto-magically. And then I can click on this Count Particles Features, and I can bring up this panel and can say, right, I want things that are going to be over an area of 2,800 micrometers squared. I'm going to expand it slightly, and I'm going to look for things that are enclosed. So there's some enclosed particles here, like there's some enclosed bits here, but it's all part of the same feature. So I'm going to enclose that, and I'm going to want to see a bounding box when I do observe the measurements. And now it's found three in this view. It's found three that match my criteria. And I can order them by area. I can order them by aspect ratio, how circularity they are, the major or minor axis. So I can go here and I can see, and what it'll do is it'll center the features that match that criteria. So if I was looking at spheres on a plane or whatever, these are the very, very powerful tools that they charge you for vast amounts of money on an annual basis to have access to, and these are critical tools, and I think I'm implementing them as well, if not better. But I would like people who use these kind of tools on a regular basis to make a determination as to whether what I've said there is true or not. So okay, so here we can see a whole bunch of these splat marks where the electronuclear collapse has spat out some carbon. I'm going to reanalyze this field of view so we can see that it has 19 detections with the parameters I've given it, And by area, the largest is 18,000. So it's this one over here, this big blob over here. And the next one is this one here, this collection here. And then the next one is over here, and so on. So this can be a way of finding structures within the data to further analyze. So at the moment, I'm looking at the dark blobs. And yeah, so really, really powerful tool. And I've tried to make it very, very easy for you to see and know what you're looking at. And then we can, you know, do proper measurements on these. You know, we can say, right, okay, let's find one where we're interested in making a measurement. Okay, so we're going to make a measurement here. We're going to do a rectangle tool. We're going to pull that into roughly our structure here. And then we're going to rotate it in plane. And then we'll just go like so. And like so. And there we go. This can be our measurement for this particular structure here. And we'll call this carbon splat. And I want to send this with some comments to a reviewer. I said, can you confirm that this is a carbon splat that has come out of a lead ball in a S71 type Matsumoto replication? Do you consider this to be synthesized material or not? Okay, so there's my commentary in there. And I'm now going to, I've got it there. You can see carbon splatters down there. And I'm going to go and CSV that out. So now I'm going to save this into my download. I'm going to say, is this a carbon splat CSV? Right, I'm going to save that into my downloads folder. Now I'm going to reload the Matsumoto replication here. And now you can see it's only got this one record where I'm looking at the description of the experiment. So I'm going to go H, and I'm going to go, right, I want to do the CSV in here. And I'm going to load this one that my friend sent me. It takes a whole 2K to store that data. I'm going to go open. It says loaded one new measurement. It skipped the one it already had. So don't worry about having things that are already in there. And then I'm going to go to this carbon splat. And there we go. It's highlighted it. And it said to me, thank you very much for the person out there in YouTube land, the teenager that did this analysis for me. Thank you very much. And you're asking me the question, can you confirm that this carbon splat that has come out of a lead ball in S71 type Matsumoto replication, do you consider this to be a synthesized material or not? I do consider that to be a synthesized material here. So I'm going to say, yes, that is. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go here to carbon splat, and I'm going to click that until it says yes. And it says carbon splat confirmed. And now I'm going to save this out, CSV out. I'm going to call this it is a carbon splat, right? In fact, I before I do that, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to edit the comment here, so I'm going to show the person some feedback. I'm saying, thank you for sharing this measurement, and I do believe that it is a carbon splat that's come out of electronuclear collapse as observed by Matsumoto in the mid-1990s. Thank you for contributing to this research. All right, so I'm going to say save, and I'm now going to go CSV out, and I'm going to say my response. Let's kind of call it my response. .csv. Okay, and then I'm going to reload this, so I'm not going to load it in as default. Matsumoto replication, and I'm going to CSV it in, and my response. Okay, and you can see that it's included the fact that it's approved. Click on it, and there we go. And it's approved, and you can see my commentary in there. So I think this is a very powerful way for people to. Ian McLean said, Bob, is this is incredible. Can we remove all material except the iron crenellated spheres and map and plot them, quantify geometry and look for patterns? That is what I'm building this tool to do. That is what I'm building this tool to do. So I'm going to take some non-magnetically recovered samples, some more. A little difficult to read white on orange. It's actually much easier on your own screen. It's much, much easier. If people have got comments on any aspect of the tool, please let me know. Send messages on the blog at remoteview.icu for this. That is a good point. The white on orange for the things down there. We can fix that. It's much clearer on your own computer though. Yeah, you're right. It's a little difficult. We can fix that. I made it originally with Grok. Well, firstly, I knew what I wanted. I could describe it very clearly. I'm very good at bug testing and also going into the code and fixing it. However, it was originally done by Grok and an LLM, and I'm going to load up LM Studio and tell you which LM I used. So I can actually show you here. This is the development cycle that I was using locally. And so basically I would have things working in Grok until I ran out of Grok tokens. But I would use Grok for where this LLM would make a mistake. And I was using Quen 3.6, 35 billion parameters with activated 3 billion at quantization of 8. And yeah, so I started this project 16 days ago, I guess. And oh no, that's when the Quen model was updated. No, I started this project about 3 weeks ago, doing 19-hour days, 7 days a week. Yeah, so you can see it was this one, which is 38.6 gigabytes download. And when it's loaded in, I think it uses somewhere between 22 and 27 gigabytes of RAM. So this is the basic. I did all the major functionality offline, but when the tool got really big, I was waiting so long for the tokens to come back and changes that I took a basic Claude paid membership, and I think it was worth it for the community. I think this tool, in many respects, is better than any tool that's available in the market. It's free. It's really easy to use, even on a touch screen, and allows people to get right into the data and contribute. And hopefully they will, and also use with their own work. So actually, what I'm going to do is right now, I think probably I've shown you how to do the histogram there. I don't know whether I want to show. I think I'm going to show you how you can load offline DZIs. So I'm just going to search on my drives here for some random DZIs, and we're going to see what they are. Why not? Okay. So this is online, free for anyone to use, but you can use this tool to load and examine your own DZIs. And what you can do is that the problem is DZIs like the Patricia sample. The color and SEM data for the Patricia sample, I think it constitutes about 70 or 80,000, something like that, individual files. The problem is my hosting provider will only allow 250,000 files per contract. So I can fill that up, but I have shared many DZIs over the last several years on Google Drive. You can download those locally. You can work on them and say, Bob, I was investigating this DZI that you had uploaded X, Y, and Z years ago. And I found, and I'm sending you this CSV as a zip file. It's an amazing 10 kilobytes, and it shows you all these measurements with all the commentary and links to references. So people can look at references, papers, and put those all into the comments, all as CSV, but all the links will automatically work when you view it in the viewer, and then other people can review those. So anyone can collaborate on studying data, and even just normal images if they're calibrated. and like I say, I'm going to try and build a calibration tool which is really easy to use separately, so that people can calibrate their own imagery. Okay, so I'm going to go and find some images here, some DZI images, and I'm literally using the online browser to look at local DZIs. And if you've got a Thermo Fisher Scientific microscope, and you can literally point it to the output DZI directory. You don't need to do any processing of the XML files. You don't need to do any processing of the 16-bit TIFF files. It automatically converts those with the exposure settings from the microscope that are in the XML, and also picks up the pixel dimension, calibrated pixel dimensions, and converts the 16-bit into 8-bit for viewing, all auto-magically. So you can directly view output from your microscope. So I don't know. I'm just going to pull in a bunch of things here, and we're going to see what happens. We might see the same things. So I'm going to go load here, and I'm going to go open a local folder. Here we go. And I'm going to drag this one in, and it might be something we're already looking at. So upload. Okay, so this is actually the Griffin Brock electrode, which is this the old one or the new one? This might be my new scan, which is super high res. So I'm going to do one which is going to be this might be the old one actually. Yeah, it's the old one. This is the old one. And I have a much higher res one, but unfortunately the contrast ratio isn't as good. Anyway, this is the Griffin Brock electrode. And I will do a matched color macro photography and deep zoom calibrated thing on this. Actually, it's better than one that I have. You can adjust the contrast here. Now we'll probably find the one that I took the other day. We'll have a look at that. So we can see this is the triangular structure of the yin, where it's got the heavier nuclei, and the yang is over here. And this itself is the yang, and then over here we have the yin. And the yin, this is, again, like I showed you on some of the Patricia sample, this is the signature, in my view, of a topological monopole, but it's a monopole that's part of a cluster of monopoles that make a large fractal magnetohydrodynamic structure. These little bands here are iron rich. They could be flecks of iron that are then stretched by the intense magnetic fields and flux lines. And again, if you look at a line, I can do a line over here, and you can see the profile of the iron compared to the aluminium across that line width. So all these kind of things. Right. So okay. So that was that one. So that was a pleasant surprise. I hadn't tried that before. Again, this has got the calibration and everything direct from the measurement. If I go to angle here, we're going to find our angle here. We're going to go to the center of the monopole here, and then out here, and then out over here. So you can see the angle between two sections here is 33.8 degrees, roughly. Okay, there we go. Okay, let's find out what else we got. Open local folder. So like I say, anyone can do this with their own data. What is this one? No, that's done. Oh, what is it? Upload. Oh, this is a version of that. Okay, so that's just what we already know. Like I say, I'm just doing a random search here, so don't know what I'm going to find. Oh, this is part of the how should I put this? The copper deposited on the iron plate in the cardioid infarction. So what I'll try to do over a period of time is I will build out fully described and with all the analysis DZI images like this. It's like a whole new world, a new fantastic point of view. There we go. Okay. Right, so that's that one. Let's have a look what else we can find. What have we got here? Oh, I think that I know what that one is. That's not very useful. That's not useful either. Let's see what this one is. It doesn't seem to have anything going on it. Oh, this is actually a different DZI I took of the Patricia sample, where it doesn't have anything out of focus, but it's more focused on the edge sample. So yeah, it's actually at a lower resolution. So that's why I didn't bother doing it. It might be in more focus on some of these edge parts. Maybe I'll merge some of the data where it's still higher. Okay, so there's that. What have we got here? Don't know what this is. Didn't like that one. Maybe it's got nothing in the directory. That is entirely possible. No, it's definitely got nothing in the directory. What about this one? No, doesn't. No, sometimes the software dies and you don't get a DZI. Right, we might see some repetitions here because I've got things copied on. I've just done a directory search for DZIs and no, not there. No. Unless it's got its knickers in a twist. Let's see if it has. No, it's just got an issue. Still working there. Okay. Yeah, there's nothing in that directory. No. Are you bored yet? Anyway, I think you get the idea. You can upload your own DZIs. There's one I wanted to show you if I can find it. Oh, these are the 130-year-old electrodes from a spark gap based communication. Thank you, Yoni, and thank you for your donation. It's very much appreciated. So these are where communication was done between two copper electrodes. And you can see the faces of the copper electrodes. So we showed that on here. We had Evo strike marks, signatures, and that this was the first signature of transmutation occurring, and it was in the late 1800s on this electrode, which was owned by the late Neil Crichton Gold. See, lots of carbon on the edge of this copper wire, and it was actually insulated with cotton insulation. So this is actually what cotton looks like under the microscope. There's a bit of a DZI artifact there. But here's a piece of cotton. Okay, so it's good actually when you have a microscope to take a bunch of different images of cotton. So that, yes, that is quite an interesting DZI. Maybe I'll upload that with some of the analysis of it. I think that would be a nice one to have publicly recorded because it is the earliest example of spark gap produced exotic vacuum objects and the synthesis of elements that they produced in their impact zones. It's based on OpenSea Dragon, yes. Yeah. Why reinvent the wheel? And there's lots of tools that are available for helping you build tiles. All right, there's one I really want to show you, but I don't know whether we're going to find it. No, that's not it. What do we got there? Nothing in there of any use. What's here? I think I did that, didn't I? Maybe it's a really big one. Oh, this might be the new. It might be caching a lot here. In fact, it's put it down there. That's why. No, it hasn't. I think it's got its knickers in the quest. Right, give me a sec. Let's clear the cache. Let's see if this works. Nope, it's maybe need some. Okay, I'm going to look at getting some cache cleared here, and then I might call it a night. But if you can contribute to analyzing the Patricia Casasa sample, that would be absolutely wonderful. Some reason it's putting the open thing somewhere on another page. Or maybe it is doing that there. No, I've lost it. Oh, here we go. Now it's working. I think it's just a really big file. It's not. It doesn't actually upload it. It says upload, but it's not uploading. It's just an artifact of this particular browser. No, it's not going to do it. All right. All right. So, does anyone have any questions? Any questions about the Patricia 2001 Deep Zoom image browser? If there's any features that you would like, any measurement tools, any improvements, any comments on layout and stuff, it would be wonderful to have your input. I want to thank, for some reason we're quite a bit behind. I want to thank Follow the Rabbit Hole and Above Things Love for your respective $10 donations. And thank you very much, Yoni6177, for your $50. That is really appreciated. What is the minimum system requirement? To run the browser, almost nothing, because OpenSeaDragon was originally designed for very incapable systems back in 2000 and the early 2000s. Yeah, very, very, very simple. I mean, I can pull it up here on my tablet, I guess. If I've got access to the internet here, I might do. What is it? Actually, I haven't looked at it on here for quite a while. Right, so this is on a tablet, so I can go, I'll do the big one. So you can see it's downloading it. There you go. And I can zoom around. What am I doing? Oh, I'm somehow touching that. Maybe I can go full screen. Will it do a full screen here? No.
There we go. So we've got full screen. You see? I've never done this before. So there we go. We can zoom in and out. It's just my web browser's got the issue at the moment. Sorry, my data. I don't know how it's connecting at the moment. Yeah. So works on a tablet. Should work on pretty much anything. Pretty much anything. Off-topic questions. Thoughts on Engate at recent IW70 conference. What's happening with the DAO? So the guy that was leading the DAO is working on another project right now. So some of the DAO programmers reached out to me, and they are now taking the reins whilst the other guy is finishing his other project. I don't know why that was doing that. I'm going to do some particle analysis whilst I'm waiting for your comments here. So we're going to do some light particle analysis. See what it can find. La-di-da. No particles found. No particles found. Closed. Found what? Yeah. Okay. It's finding blobs. Blobs. Lots of blobs. More interested in these. So you can identify some particles, it centers it, and drop a circle on it. Anyone got a question? If not, I will say thank you very much for your time. Okay, record, save. Definitely got another circle here, although it's a bit mashed up. It's a bit mashed up, isn't it? And by the way, when you've done particle analysis, you can export that as a CSV as well, separately for further ongoing analysis. Let's see, if we come out, we go to a different area, it's going to find some more balls. That's the way it works. We're going to reanalyze and it finds some more balls. And now we're going to have a look at these ones. Not really, not really. We need to change the specifics. Just looking at dirt right now. Epic fail. Probably better to look at the other end of the spectrum.
Okay. Gonna go big and a little bit of expand. Boom. Okay. Done. Yeah. This is better. Kind of circles in there, kind of. That's where it was. Blown up. It's probably that big. Record. Okay, so what about the next one? There we go. There's keystrokes for everything, by the way. I did mention that earlier, but in case you missed it. That's a real splattered one. Look at that. And if we go to a new area, like so, what's it going to do? Doink, doink. Yeah. I think the circle was probably somewhere like that before it splattered down. Now, I'm going to confirm all these just because I can. Of course, this is not hard-coded, so get rid of these windows. And we are going to show some statistics. And the statistics show there are 7 measurements with a mean of 36.8 microns, a minimum of 24 microns, and a maximum of 65 microns. So there's quite a few standard deviations at the moment because of this one. I think if you click on these, it should, if I actually get rid of the measurement here, it should go to them. Maybe it's not going to do that. Why is it not going to do that? Anyway, it should go to them. Just not at the moment. And we can do a report. And we're going to do a report with an overview. There we go. And it's got our chart down there. Anyway, I would appreciate your comments, constructive or otherwise. No, mostly constructive. That would be good. And with that, I will say, if there's no questions, can someone send me a copy of Matsumoto to Sabine Hostenfender? Yeah, right. She could just do the experiment. She doesn't have to like have a copy of it. Like, she just get a piece of lead wire, find a main socket, and plug it in. No, don't do that, Sabine. I don't want you to hurt yourself. Yeah, this is a simple experiment, and all of the details are published. We've shown the replication, and you know, she doesn't live too far from the SEM. She can come and do the experiment herself and learn. You see, I don't know, and I don't want to say that this is the case, but it struck me a bit like Robert Murray Smith, that sadly departed. Robert Murray Smith kind of like had a bigger YouTube presence than myself by far, and out of the blue, within a 2-week period, he decided to attack John Hutchison and then attack Cold Fusion. Of course, Sabine hasn't attacked John Hutchison, but it was embarrassing how out of touch, and it looked like it was badly written by AI, and she hadn't checked the facts, and that is just an embarrassing situation for her to be in, really. So I feel sorry for her. I think it's the only way I can really describe it. I feel sorry for her. it's like she wants science to change, because she's going to make sure those that are changing science are also put down. Oh dear. Yeah, she can just do the ultra experiment or this experiment. Two very simple experiments. Show the process in play. Yeah, I think you're right, Chalxus. I think you're right. Can you search for octagons? Very good. Actually, so where I want to go with this is when we're using the histogram tools, of course, under these particular measurements over here, it actually will tell you the circularity over here. So if I actually pull this down, and we'll get a few more spots coming up, hopefully, at some point. All right, so we've got a whole bunch here. We can do circularity here. So this is more circular, for instance, than, well, no, sorry, that's more circularity. That's very circular. So rather than by area, we do by circularity. It should give us some indication of the circularity of some of these things, or maybe not. Anyway, that one's certainly circular. Anyway, and if it's very long, like it's got a very big aspect ratio, so this one is a larger aspect ratio than the one at the bottom of the list, which is, okay, so this is a very circular structure. This is not. He says, this is not. I would suggest that we can use this to drive automagically the choice of circle tool and rectangle tool to automatically position things over samples detections. Good night, Chalxus. I'm going to go to sleep. So Xandra was asked, what's my talk at Salesforce? It's not at Salesforce. It's an organization that ran a competition, and they're just hosting the interviews or whatever in their Salesforce tower. They called the competition Flux Capacitor, and someone saw that and thought it was funny and just sent it to me. So I just sent my video from Flux Capacitor and a couple of other associated videos with cavitation to them, and said that I would like some support to do testing of aluminosilicate in a cavitator to see if we see the synthesis of iron and excess energy as per the claimed observations of Kladoff. See ya, EBB 241. Yeah, Tammy, she probably did. Spend too long. Okay, I'm going to call it a night. That's it. I've done what I wanted to do, which was to go over the tools. If you have something that you would like in there, or you would like it to be done better, or you have suggestions for how it would be better, then please let me know. I will say buenas noches, dobranoc, good night. Have a great week.